He's not the only Cardinals nominee. Brendan Donovan is a nominee for the utility player. Nolan Arenado, once again, a nominee for the Cardinals at the Gold Glove for third base. Those are their three nominees. No Michael Ciani. I think he was snubbed. We'll get into that later on. My question to you, Alex, because I find Masyn Winn to be a fascinating discussion topic. He's a great player. He's obviously excellent defensively. He showed more offensive upside this year than I think a lot of us were anticipating. Is he, as of today, the number one player that, in your opinion, the Cardinals are building around?
No. Mine would be Jordan Walker. As great as Masyn Winn is, and don't get me wrong, that's the player. You need players like that if you want to win anything of substance in baseball. Guy who's got Gold Glove awards, guy who's superb defensively and has the clutch ability. And I know it's hard to measure that, but just watching him in big moments, he can come through. You still need a superstar to build around if you're the Cardinals. You need somebody who has 30-plus home run potential. I don't see that in Masyn Winn. If he develops that more power somehow, I can change my tune on this. But I would look at Jordan Walker of how they framed this player, a 5'2" player who's got the ability to have power, have the ability to be clutch, good defensively. That would be the one that if I'm the Cardinals, I'm still building around.
Yeah, I think he's always just a complimentary piece. I don't think he's the guy that you look at now that you're going through the refresh and go, okay, who are our pillars that we're going to build around? I don't think he's there. I think the pillar is still Jordan Walker. You're trying to build him up as that first superstar, and I'm not going to count Contreras just because I think there's a chance he's traded. Walker's that first superstar you try to build around, and then you got to find the second one with him when you try to build this new version of whatever the St. Louis Cardinals look like in the Chaim Bloom era. I think Masyn Winn is always the guy that's just going to be kind of like Brendan Donovan, where you look at him and you go, okay, he's a 5 to 15% above league average hitter. He's going to give us Gold Glove level defense, and he's a guy that we can place as the guy that is our franchise shortstop for the next 6 to 10 years, but I don't think he's a guy you build around. I think that's Jordan Walker and maybe one other player that's maybe not even in the organization just yet.
So I think I'm going to take the other side on this one, guys. And the reason why is because I think we're undervaluing the, for lack of a better term, value that Masyn Winn brings to the table. Wins above replacement. It's a statistic that some people love, a lot of people hate. I understand it. It basically just is an all-encompassing number, though. It's not the gospel. I'm not trying to suggest that it is. But it helps you get a better understanding of, how are these players putting together value on the baseball fields? It takes into account base running and offense, defense, everything in between. For Masyn Winn, I think it captures accurately. It represents just how valuable of a baseball player he is. And a lot of this does come from his defense. Here are some of the players in the National League that, according to Baseball Reference's wins above replacement statistic, he was more valuable than Masyn Winn was in the 2024 season, right? This is in the National League alone. Jackson Merrill, Matt Olson, Jackson Chourio, Brian Reynolds, Kyle Schwarber, Manny Machado, Corbin Carroll, Willie Adames, Michael Harris II, JT Realmuto, Wilson Contreras. There are some stars, Pete Alonso, that are below him. If you want to get a little bit more frisky with it, here are some others.
Oh, boy.
Bryce Harper, Freddie Freeman, Manny Machado, Mookie Betts, Jackson Merrill.
If you ever want to know why WAR is not good.
What's it good for?
Now, they're like all right there with him. It's by decimal points how much Masyn Winn was more valuable than those guys that I just listed off. If you want to go by Fangraph's version of wins above replacement, he is more in line with guys like Ian Happ and Trey Turner, Jackson Chourio, Jose Altuve, etc. I think Masyn Winn can be a franchise building block. I think he can be the guy that you end up building around. I think we saw this year what the potential floor is for him, where it's a really high batting average, a little lower on base percentage because he doesn't take a ton of walks. I think there's more power in there. I think he can unlock more power. He was a 15 home run guy as a rookie this season. Why can't Masyn Winn become a 20 to 25 home run hitter with Gold Glove defense at shortstop, with 20 stolen bases per year? If that's who he becomes, guys, he's like Francisco Lindor light. That's what we're talking about, him potentially becoming as a player for the Cardinals. So I think right now, he is the most sure thing of any of the players that the Cardinals have developed internally. I think he already has all-star potential. He's clearly Gold Glove potential at the most valuable defensive position. this is the guy you're building around, man. Also, he has star, I don't even know how to define this, but
Swag.
yes, he has the ability to almost persuade Cardinals fans to go to the games because of the performance that he's going to put out there on the field.
I don't know if there's a player
He at least
on the
brings the
roster for
idea
that.
to mind, and then I think of the rest of the roster. I'm like,
He has the type of performance that gets me up out of my seat. He has that kind of capability. He's super athletic. He's fun as hell defensively. He plays the game the quote-unquote right way. I remember there were games this year down like 6-1 in the 7th inning. Cardinals had no chance of coming back in this one. And this dude's out there just making diving plays, stretching towards the second base side, and he's still making those plays even when they're down or when they're way up. He has everything all encompassed in a one position player. For me, I don't know what more you can ask for from a guy at that position than what you saw this year. As a rookie for Masyn Winn, I'm building around him. He, for me, is the #1 building block because I've got real questions about what Jordan Walker is, what Nolan Gorman is, what Lars Nootbaar is. I don't really have a whole lot of questions about Masyn Winn.
unless he gets, and I'm with you on everything that you just stated, but unless he gets to that power, you're still going to be wanting more from somebody on the roster. He's going to have the defense. He's going to have the gold glove. He's going to have that swag. But if he's only giving you 15 home runs, and let's just, again, go down the hypothetical path that he doesn't find that power, and 15 is probably like what he is, you're still going to be looking for the guy in the middle of the lineup that you're saying that's the guy that we're going to rely on in big situations. And I hope Masyn Winn gets there, because if Masyn Winn can add 10 more home runs and he's a 25 home run hitter consistently and he's Francisco Lindor light, like you just said, then I'm with you. You've got your guy. But the whole profile of Masyn Winn has always been defense, speed. It hasn't been a whole lot of power. And so that's what I'm basing it off of, even with his 15 home run performance. So I will look at that and say, like, that is a huge piece that you have to have. You always have to have the Robin to your Batman, and he could be that guy.
I don't know that I agree with what you just said, by the way. I think we have undersold the power that Masyn Winn has as the potential in his bat. Last year in Memphis, he hit 18 home runs in 105 games with a slugging percentage of .475. That's pop, man.
That's fine, but at the major league level, I haven't seen it.
He just hit 15 home runs at the big league level this year.
And
in the
that was
second
his
half
first year.
Sure, but I mean, that normally guys add more power to their game, not less. Like, I don't know what Masyn Winn's batting average is going to be long term. I think it's possible he got some good batted ball luck this year, especially early on in the season, but then he did continue to overtime, just like a .270 hitter. I think that's probably in line with where he's going to be. His slugging percentage in the second half was really good, man. I don't know that we saw what his full capability is on that regard.
Totally, but we're arguing what he could be, and I'm not arguing
also what he is.
Yes, but he's not a 30 home run hitter yet.
No, but I think he has the potential to be I don't think he's ever going to be a 30 home run guy. I think there are very few guys that have that potential.
Right. But
I think
if he gets to the 25, I'm 100% on board with you that that's the guy you build around, and that puts Jordan Walker on the back
he's
burner.
even that far away from getting to 25. I think within the next 3 years, that's very much in play. Like next year, if Masyn Winn hit 25 home runs for the Cardinals, it would be a surprise. But I think it's very much in his range of outcomes. This is a guy that last year in the minor leagues in 100 games hit 18 home runs. Yes, that's against minor league pitching. That is totally important to say. But
in a much friendlier ballpark.
Sure. But this year, he already did it with 15. Like, I don't know how I can sit here and say he doesn't have that kind of pop in his bat when we just saw it.
I think he's got the potential to get there, but I think until you really start to see him take another stride forward, then will he move into that kind of range of outcomes of, okay, he's the guy we build around. And I know that sounds strange to say since both me and Alex just said, hey, Jordan Walker's in that. I mean, Jordan Walker's also the kind of special prospect that you live or die by if you're an organization.
I agree.
I mean, he's got
and
the
that's
five.
how they've sold it to us.
He's got the 5 tools. I mean, you look at, he just is a freak of nature when he steps into that batter's box. It's just a matter if he can figure it out.
He could be Matt Holliday.
100%. And that's where it just comes down for Masyn Winn. You know, though he had hype, he also, as we saw this year, though he had 15 home runs, which is nothing to just sneeze at, but it was also more of a slap hitter. I mean, you look at his baseball savant page, there's a lot of blue there. I mean, the chase rate was up. You look at the average exit velo was 14th percentile. Like, it doesn't scream necessarily that is something that is
Just a
going
good
to
all-around hitter,
project
though.
forward. And it also projects, like, if it's a slap hitter, I wouldn't build around a guy.
You're only using the stuff that goes against Masyn Winn. Look at the sweet spot. Look at where he hits the ball.
All right,
the
sweet
trajectory
spot,
of the ball.
40th percentile.
Look at, I haven't even pulled his stuff
Hard
up,
hit
but
percentage, 14th percentile. Barrel percentage, 10th percentile. Expected slug, 22nd percentile. Like, there's a lot of blue on here. And again, that's not the end-all, be-all. I do think the eye test matters, but I do think these numbers
up the
are
ball,
telling.
65th percentile, expected batting average, 65th. Like, we can go through all this stuff. We can if you really want to, but
There's more blue on my side.
sure. The sweet spot, like how he hits the ball, the launch angle, everything that he does, I think we're underselling the pop potential of Masyn Winn. And honestly, the argument's already on my side, and that he just did it. He just put out 15 home run power.
But you've used the argument in the past for Cardinals prospects in the system and how, like, there was no expectation of this guy to be a superstar. You go to the top 100.
But there was for Masyn Winn.
He wasn't a top 100 prospect in baseball.
Absolutely was the top 100 prospect. He was in the top 40, though, last year.
Looking
He
at
was 39th in Baseball America, 43rd in Major League Baseball, and 53rd in Baseball Prospectus. He was a top 100 prospect by everybody.
I was looking in 2021, and he wasn't in that top 100.
He wasn't a prospect in 2021.
He was drafted 2020.
Correct. He wasn't a prospect yet in 2021 because he had never played a game. 2020 was the COVID season, so he wasn't even a part of the system, really. By 2023, he was one of the top Cardinals prospects, and he was a top 50 prospects by everybody's accord. He was a top 40 prospect in almost every single category. Masyn Winn's a star, man. I don't know if he's going to be a superstar. I don't know what he's going to be long term, but right now, he's already a potential Gold Glove caliber shortstop, the most valuable defensive position on the infield and all of the field. He's already a guy that had value by wins above replacement among the top 50 in Major League Baseball. He's already a guy that hit 15 home runs at the Major League level. He hit 270 for almost the entirety of the season. I think Masyn Winn, for me, would be the number one guy that is the next face of the franchise. Like, next year, Cardinals put out all of their promos. Who's the guy that's face of all of that?
See,
It's Masyn Winn.
I don't disagree that he's the face of the franchise.
Those are two different
I said
things.
that this season. I said that at the All-Star break, that he's already become the face of the franchise.
I think those things are one and the same.
I don't think that necessarily means you're the building block for the team.
He's
You know,
not the
Harrison
piece that
Bader
gets
had
you
kind of
there.
become the face of the franchise for a while in terms of, hey, he's on everything. We're
Let me say this
promoting
a different
Harrison
way,
Bader.
then. I think Masyn Winn is not only the face of the franchise for next year, but has the potential to be that for the next 10 years. That's how I view him currently. I think he can be for the Cardinals 5 years from now some kind of version of what Francisco Lindor is right now for the New York Mets. I think he has that kind of capability. And I think we have, at times, undersold just how good Masyn Winn can be because we have focused so much on what Jordan Walker could potentially be.
He feels a lot like what Yadier Molina was throughout his time in St. Louis. And you're going to look at that, which is great. Don't get me wrong, Hall of Fame career, but you're still wanting that bat that you can look at and be like, that's the piece that sets us over the top.
Yadier Molina, that like 2013 to 2015 range, was arguably the best bat on the Cardinals.
Absolutely. But it was 2 out of his entire career.
No doubt.
And for the rest of it, it was Albert Pujols, it was Matt Holliday. You were always wanting that extra bat.
Yachty, go back and look at what he was early on in his career. He never showed anything like this. What Yachty was, offense-wise, early in his career, had no resemblance whatsoever to what we just saw last year from Masyn Winn. I think they're like opposite ends of the spectrum of how they came into the league. I think Yachty defensively, what he adds there, I mean, it's hard to compare anything to catcher, but yeah, that's the comparison to Masyn Winn. I think Masyn Winn has already shown we don't need to compare him offensively to what Yadier Molina was early in his career. I think he can be much, much, much more than that for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Speaking of guys that have been a little bit of a surprise already early on in their tenure, how about Dylan Holloway? There was a comparison that I think Alex is going to like that Jeremy Rutherford made to Dylan Holloway earlier today. We'll read that off for you next here on 101 ESPN.
Have kids under 25? We can save you money at carltoninsurance.net.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Classic Air Care, taking care of you and your HVAC system since 1926. Whether you're in the market for buying a new one or maybe you're just in the market to find a company who can take care of your really old one like I have since 2016, Classic Air Care is the destination for you. You can also check out their over 2,500 Google reviews, a 4.8 rating up on their Google reviews, talking about the knowledgeable technicians and the great customer service that Classic Air Care provides. You can also see this, one of them just from a Coco. Nick is the greatest, very punctual, professional, and organized. Everything was explained to me in great detail from the work that will be getting down to the exact price of the HVAC system that we are having installed. After having an HVAC system of 30-plus years in my home, we'll be getting a brand new one thanks to Classic Air Care. So you can check it out online, classicaircare.com, whether you're wanting to get a quote on your new HVAC system or you want to schedule your maintenance agreement. All of that can be done at classicaircare.com. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
Make your picks for this week's Fastlane Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Show off your football knowledge and see if you can top the Fastlane and the dudes from the Rizzuto Show on the point. For this week's top score, it's the Fastlane and the Riz Show throwing down all football season long in the Pick'em Challenge. Enter your picks for this week right now at 101ESPN.com.
Refreshed by Bud Light, official beer sponsor of the NFL. Easy to Sunday, easy to enjoy.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, are you mad at me?
Why would I be mad at you?
So I felt like there was a little bit of animosity
There was a
there.
lot of
You don't
tension in
like
the room.
Masyn Winn. I do like Masyn Winn.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
BK
I
told us in
wasn't
the
prior to that
office.
segment, and now you're just being an a-hole. So, yeah, now we are.
He told us in the office, I'm going to take the other side in this argument. Boy, he came out swinging.
Yeah.
Hey, man,
You know,
if we're
he's
going to
attacking
open
me
things
by
up.
going, well, I'll show you the red on the baseball
We're reading
savant
off
page.
war.
Hey, so
I
the
tell you where
Cardinals-
you're wrong.
It's like
Cardinals-
last year where he tried to sell us on Lance Lynn, more strikeouts than Shohei Ohtani.
No.
And told me about the freaking home runs.
Yeah,
Didn't
home
matter.
runs
That was
didn't
so
matter.
stupid. I think guess who had a home run problem? Gray, of all
He's
people.
using war.
I'll go and defend myself real quick. I said Lance Lynn had a higher swinging strike rate than Shohei, which was true. He also had a higher swinging strike rate this year than Shohei. Go ahead and check that. Also,
I knew where he was
Lynn
going.
okay in that regard this season. He ended up having a decent year, all things considered, for the Cardinals.
Yeah, got him into the playoffs, didn't it?
Well, no. Anyways, so the Blues back in action tonight. Alex is going to be on the pregame coverage for that one starting today at 5:30. A little bit of an early pregame coverage for Alex Ferrario. They have their home opener against the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild's general manager, Bill Guerin, will join us coming up at 12 o'clock today, so be sure to stay tuned for that. We're going to talk to him as he's in town for the Wild versus the Blues coming up in about an hour. But Alex, one of the guys that's going to be on the ice for the Blues, he's been up and down the lineup so far this year, center and winger, is Dylan Holloway. I've been really impressed by what we've seen thus far from Dylan Holloway. It's only 3 games. I don't want to make of it too much, but I did find it interesting. There was a really good piece earlier today from Jeremy Rutherford, who's going to join us here in about 10 minutes or so on BK and Ferrario. He talked to an NHL scout about Dylan Holloway and a comparison that this scout made for who his game reminds him of. Alex, you have not seen this yet. I wanted to make sure that you did not see it. I told you, please do not read the story because I want to get your genuine, authentic reaction on the air for the listeners. said the NHL player that is the best comparable to Holloway, according to this scout, is Calgary Flames' Blake Coleman. He's a middle six forward, has 135 goals, 252 points in 545 games with the Flames, Devils, and Lightning, with whom he won 2 Stanley Cup championships. Quote, those guys are so valuable, the scout told Jeremy Rutherford. Holloway signed that contract. It's a little higher than what he's probably worth today, but ultimately, if you can have those third-line players that are under $3 million a year, scoring 15 goals per season and playing in those tough situations, those can be really valuable pieces, end quote. Alex, what do you think of that comparison? Dylan Holloway with a guy that I've enjoyed the hell out of watching over the last few years in Blake Coleman.
I think that's a great comp. And Blake Coleman last year for Calgary, when he was played as a top-line winger, was a 30-goal scorer for them. He's playing 17 minutes a night and getting 30 goals. So I guess that's not even really a top-line winger. It's like a second-line winger. But going off of what he was talking about in his early days with the New Jersey Devils, and then when he won those 2 Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning, he was a perfect secondary piece for that championship team, that when you needed to give a shift off to your top line of whether it was Point or Stamkos or Kucherov, you threw Coleman out there. And Coleman did everything in those years where they won the back-to-back Stanley Cups. He was a physical presence. He could win a couple faceoffs for him if they needed to, played the penalty kill, played on a secondary power play. I think he got Selke Trophy votes, if I'm not mistaken, back when he was with New Jersey. If that's what Dylan Holloway becomes, that's a heck of a player and a steal for the Blues. Now, he's right. You're not going to pay him. I think Coleman's making, what, $6.5 million right now with the Calgary Flames?
4.9.
4.9. Okay, that's still a actually really good deal for them. But Calgary had to overpay to bring in a player like that. But for Dylan Holloway, who's, 23, 24 years old, and he's making this for them, yeah, I really like that comp.
T-Bone, you saw this earlier today. What immediately came to mind for you when you saw Blake Coleman as the comparison for Dylan Holloway?
Well, outside of first, I knew that player. Second, it was, I would sign up if you told me like he ends up just becoming Blake Coleman, where I can basically write in pen a guy that's going to score 20 goals for me every season, and he's going to be right around like 40 points. Yeah, that's a win if you're the St. Louis Blues. You just brought this guy in for a third-round pick, and you gave him his contract. Maybe he's a little overpaid for the time being, but if he ends up developing into that, you're basically getting a bang for your buck, and you're right at what your value was when you signed him. So, and, I mean, we've talked about it. Teams need players like a Brandon Saad, like a Blake Coleman. If you're going to go win in the playoffs, you need these guys that provide that depth of scoring. So I love the comp, and if you told me if I could press a button, he just becomes Blake Coleman, I would press my button right now.
I love that you brought up Brandon Saad, because that's where I was going. I think he's Brandon Saad with physicality. Yeah. He's got the speed of Brandon Saad. There was some really good information in this piece from Jeremy Rutherford on the speed that we've already seen this year from Dylan Holloway. The NHL is doing some of this like burst scores, where basically it's measuring how fast you're skating and how often you get to that top speed. So it's not like Major League Baseball, where it's the average, and it's just, hey, out of all of it's the bursts. And Dylan Holloway, among all players in the NHL, is like one of the best at that. He's getting to his top speed as often as just about anybody in the league this year. We knew he brought that kind of an element to the game. What I have been impressed by and surprised by is how physical he is. He brings more grit to the lineup than what I anticipated personally. It reminds me a little bit of what we saw at the end of last season from Zach Bolduc, where I was like, okay, I've heard about all of the speed and the shot from Bolduc. I'm a little surprised by like the pesky nature of how he plays the game. That's what I've been surprised by as well with Dylan Holloway. If you've got Holloway in your lineup, and you've got Jake Neighbors in your lineup, you've got Buchnevich and Kyrou, you're starting to fill this thing out. We're like, okay, I feel pretty good about some of these wingers that the Blues have started to develop. You add in a potential of a Zach Bolduc, add in the potential of a Jimmy Snuggerud. Now you think about what Dvorsky could be in the middle. They've really started to fill this thing out in their top 9, man, in a way that really makes you feel happy about what Doug Armstrong has done. And you can see what the vision is now, and it's coming together at the NHL level. He's got to do it. He has 1 point so far this year. So Holloway eventually has to produce at the NHL level for this to become what it really is. But I think Holloway could be for you this year what Jake Neighbors was for you last year. Not just in the physicality that they bring to the game, but in that Jake Neighbors made everything worth it last year, man. That guy was like, okay, the year wasn't super fun to watch at times, but at least you got this. You got a top 6 forward out of it, and that guy's going to be around for the next decade. I think Broberg and Holloway are going to be that for you this year, where I don't know what the season's going to bring. I don't know if the Blues are going to be really good, but I'm pretty sure Broberg's going to be a part of this thing for the long haul. I'm pretty sure Dylan Holloway is going to be a part of this thing for the long haul, and that makes everything else worth it.
It's depth to your lineup, and that's what you didn't have over the last couple of years, specifically last season. Why it went so poorly is because the depth to your lineup stopped at your second line, and even your second line was kind of squinting and hoping because you had Neighbors playing on your fourth line and you had a Kapanen and a Verana playing on your second line. Now we're talking about a team that now you're talking about a team when Saad's healthy, who's playing tonight, when you've got Dylan Holloway, you're 3 lines deep before you even bring up a guy like a Kapanen or a Alexandrov, who was playing in your third line at times last season. Like, you're 3 lines deep to where Dylan Holloway is not relied on to be a top line player. And you see Holloway in the playoffs last year and think, oh, well, he could do that. He was playing on a second line with Leon Draisaitl. If you're starting him on a third line where he's...
what Booch is, though, you know?
So I've been told, a 600 winning percentage.
They can both play on the wing, so what am I saying?
Leon Draisaitl's not doing a lot of winning right now early on for the Edmonton Oilers, but he gives you another option so that you can give your top line a shift off. Because last season, every time that top line would step on the ice, they had to score.
We don't have much time on this. We want to get to Jeremy Rutherford, get his thoughts on his piece here in just a moment, but I did find it interesting. In that piece from Jeremy Rutherford, he also mentioned a quote from Drew Bannister who said, I thought he played better at the center position than he did on the wing.
Oh, geez, back to this again.
I actually don't mind it as much with Holloway as I do with Booch.
If he's on the third line, yeah.
Correct. Is that something that you think they eventually will explore, Alex? Like, when they end up with their full lineup, do you think Shin could move up to that second line center position? And you do go with Dylan Holloway and give him some extended run as that third line center. Is that something? Because I like that way more than I like finding out what you have with Booch at center, because I think we know Booch is not going to be center long-term for this team. He is going to be a really important winger for the team. I could see that as something that you explore and get answers on it now before it becomes overly crowded down the middle. So that way you can find out, hey, is this a guy that has legitimate opportunity to become a center at this level? It's kind of like having a shortstop. You want to find out if they're going to fail at shortstop first before you move them to second, third, maybe to the outfield, whatever. They're more valuable if they can stay at shortstop long term. I kind of feel that way about Holloway at center.
I mean, I endorse anything that gets Pavel Buchnevich off of the center spot because I think he's a 35 goal scorer, and you're not going to get to that in playing a second line centerman spot. I think Schen's also better than what people are giving him credit for, and I would put that there. Going back to the Blake Coleman comp, Blake Coleman is naturally a winger, but he played the center position for Tampa Bay for a little bit, New Jersey for a little bit, and then they moved him back over to wing where he's at in Calgary right now. They always say, players will tell you, it's easier for a centerman to move to wing than a wing it is to move to center, and Dylan Holloway's a natural winger. But I would try it now as a 23-year-old and see if you get anything. And then by the time Dvorsky develops, when Zach Dean's ready to go, when maybe you got another centerman that comes in, then you can shift him back over to his natural spot. But yeah, if I could get Booch off the center spot, I would move that up.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. One thing that maybe you could do there is if you're trying to bring Sonny back slowly, maybe you play him there at center one night and then play him on the wing the next. You have Fox to come up, down in the lineup. You kind of play things out that way. I could maybe see something like that. Curious to see what they decide to do with the lineup in that regard. Coming up next, we'll talk to Jeremy Rutherford about his piece on Dylan Holloway, plus what has been his biggest takeaway after the first week of the Blues season. Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider, joins us next here on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Under Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about Ted Drew's famous frozen custard, the famous destination off of Chippewa that has had 95 years and 4 generations of families serving St. Louisans that famous frozen custard. First of all, if they pride themselves on the customer service, you get to Ted Drew's. It may look like a long line. You're not waiting there long to get your famous frozen custard. But on top of it, it's remained a family-owned and operated business. It's founded on the motto, our business is service, and they've got that commitment to you when you step into Ted Drew's parking parking lot off of Chippewa. Plus, all of the favorite flavors that you can go through, whether it's the City Red. Since it's the Blues opening night, go get yourself a Blue Note, which is vanilla custard mixed with a blend of fresh blueberries, smooth lemon cream, and graham crackers. You can get it as a concrete or a sundae. Plus, you could get it in the quart size and bring it home with you, freeze it, and have Ted Drew's whenever you desire. While you're down there, make sure you walk across the parking lot and check out their gift shop off of Chippewa, where you can shop for Ted Drew's apparel, for souvenirs, for gift cards, all of it available for you there. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
Looking for a dining experience that's a cut above the rest? Come to Gallagher's Restaurant and Event Space in Waterloo, Illinois, your local gem where every meal is a masterpiece. After a stunning renovation, Gallagher's has created the perfect atmosphere for you to enjoy a curated menu with award-winning cuisine and signature cocktails. Visit them at 114 West Mill Street in Waterloo, Illinois, or call 618-939-9933 to make a reservation or inquire about their event space. Gallagher's, where fine dining and heartfelt hospitality come together. Another fabulous locally owned restaurant supported by Kuna Food Service.
The world's largest sports book in Las Vegas is now right at your fingertips here in Illinois. Hi, I'm Derek Stevens. I'm a lifelong sports bettor, and I'm the owner of Circus Sports. We're excited about launching our Circus Sports app in Illinois. It's sports betting the way it should be, with high betting limits, tight money line splits, exceptional customer service, and more. Download your new bookie today at circusports.com. Start betting like a pro from anywhere in Illinois.
See the area's largest display of Master Spas hot tubs and Michael Phelps swim spas, all made in the USA. Over 30 on display. Call 314-843-7727. They put the "ah" in spa.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Today it was announced that the St. Louis Cardinals have 3 players that are finalists for Gold Gloves. Masyn Winn at shortstop, Nolan Arenado at third base, and then Brendan Donovan for the utility Gold Glove. And NHL-wise, Blues back in action tonight as they've got their home opener against the Minnesota Wild. Well, pregame coverage starting at 5:30 with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 6:30 with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline on the day that the St. Louis Blues are back in town. They will have their home opener tonight. We will have full coverage beginning at 5:30. Alex has that for you. Puck drop today on 101 ESPN at 6:30. Blues versus the Minnesota Wild. Jeremy Rutherford is going to be chronicling all of that for The Athletic. He joins us now as he does each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Loved the piece earlier today on Dylan Holloway. We just got done breaking that down a bit with the comparison that you got from the scout. Dylan Holloway compared to Blake Coleman. What was the most interesting thing that you found from your conversations with the scout about what he's seen so far from Dylan Holloway?
Yeah, I think the ability to process the hockey IQ is what the scout wanted to see from Dylan Holloway in terms of where his projection is. And so he was complimentary of Dylan Holloway, saying that, look, this is a good, talented player and a great pickup by the Blues, fast as blazes and has a lot of tenacity, but can the mind keep up with his physical play and his pace? So he thinks that if he can, then it can be a really good player. And, the other part of that story, which I'm sure you guys touched on, is in Edmonton, a lot of good players in that top six. And as Dylan Holloway said, not to say that there aren't good players in the Blues top six, but he thinks that the ceiling could be higher in St. Louis. And the scout, said that at the end of the day, probably a third-line player, but the ability to play up, and that's not a bad thing.
I'm curious, just development purposes, of how you utilize that as a coach, JR, because like Bannister, we've seen him use him as a top-line winger with Robert Thomas. We've seen him use as a third-line centerman. And when you're 23 years old and haven't even played 100 games in the NHL, there's still wiggle room to try and develop who you want to be at the NHL level.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that wiggle room is good, and the versatility to play winger or center is obviously good in today's NHL. Look, I mean, you go back 20 years in this league and 30 years, and guys primarily stuck to their position, and now it's interchangeable. And so, as you mentioned, Holloway playing wing on that top line to start the season, and now he's playing wing on the third line. But Drew Bannister told me yesterday where they like him best so far in the limited action is at center. But right now they're going to have Braden Chen at center on that third line. So, could we see long-term Dylan Holloway be in the middle for the St. Louis Blues? Possibly. But with the guys in and out of the lineup right now, Brandon Saad coming back, Texier hurt, things like that, they've got Holloway on the wing on that third line.
JR, what is your understanding of their plan with Oscar Sundqvist?
So, according to Drew Bannister yesterday, he said that he's day-to-day, not week-to-week, but then he qualified that by saying, but not this week. So it sounds like next week is when we would see Oscar Sundqvist come back. And guys, he's been cleared for contact. We've seen him all of training camp. I know he didn't play in any exhibition games, but he was out there every day, skating hard, playing that rugged Oscar Sundqvist style. And so, as Drew Bannister said yesterday, I mean, we're looking to next week on the calendar for the possibility of him to come back from that knee injury that he had last year.
So, JR, how do they deploy the lines, in your opinion, once he comes back? Because I've made my point pretty clear that I think you move everybody up in the center spot to give you Pavel Buchnevich back as a winger.
Yeah, and that's certainly a possibility, I think in a lot of minds, including, mine. But I think that you look at the situation and they're getting production out of Pavel Buchnevich. I know that not all of his offense has come from playing center because he's moved around. He's played some wing and he got the power play too. But I think they're going to stick with it. I just on the surface, I think they're going to stick with Buchnevich at center. And also, Alex, you might start Sundqvist on the wing to come back, get his legs underneath him, and then maybe he moves back to the center. So I think for now, you're probably looking at Sundqvist coming in on that fourth line. Gosh, does he take Nathan Walker's spot? I really like Walker and what he does. I wrote about that last week. I'll continue to say that. He just brings a spark to this team. So I don't know whose spot he's going to take. I think that'll depend, too. Is Texier back, and does he really force a log jam in there?
We're talking to Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic. He joins us each and every Tuesday on BK and Ferrario. Be sure to read all of his great work at The Athletic and follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. JR, when you talk to the Blues about why they want Pavel Buchnevich as their center, what is their perspective on this? You just mentioned you think that there's a real chance that they keep him there. Why? What would they say as the reason for that?
Well, they've touched on it, talking about the 600-point percentage, and Pavel Buchnevich told us that too. He said that's what the conversation was in their meetings. The team wins when Pavel Buchnevich plays in the middle. I think also you look at his 200-foot game, and he's one of the players on the Blues roster who can bring it at both ends. And then also, Braden Shen, can you play him on the wing on the top six? Yeah. But, boy, he sure gives you some depth if he's your third-line center. So, I don't think that we're going to see Buchnevich at center all year long. It's a long season. Obviously, there's injuries. There's different situations. I think you'll see Buchnevich on the wing at times. And we do see him on the wing with Kyrou and Thomas when Drew Bannister's trying to get that offense going. So I just think that, we talk about that topic, Buchnevich in the middle. They like it. I can't see them abandoning it a month into the season, even though that's what one of my bold predictions was. I don't see the Blues doing that. And I just think we're going to see constant movement back and forth with him in the middle, but playing the wing when they have those offensive opportunities.
So what breaks that up then, JR? Is it just Dalibor Dvorsky? And I hate harping on this because I can't deny they won 2 of their 3 games on the road with him at the center spot. But it's what you said. They
also got back into it in the third period in one of those games when he was up on the top line.
Yeah, they've been
to be very clear here, I don't know if it's causation versus correlation.
They've been breaking them up, and they've gotten offense from Pavel Buchnevich as a winger.
No, and I understand that, and I don't have the point breakdown in front of me, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. Is his offense? He's looked really good. He's put himself in good scoring positions and scored some big goals already. I just think that they've decided in their mind that this is the way that the roster is built, and is it tied into Dvorsky? I don't think so. I don't. You got to, when you look at plans, what's the immediate plan and what's the long-term plan? Of course, Dvorsky's the long-term plan, but in the meantime, they've got to win, and they were without Brandon Saad the first couple games, and Shen's bounced back and forth between top 6 and then third line, and Dylan Holloway too. So they're just moving some parts around, but I think we're going to continue to see what we see with the way they're deploying Buchnevich.
Jeremy Rutherford has great work over at The Athletic. If you'd like to read his piece about Dylan Holloway, what he's brought to the table so far, what his ceiling could be potentially for the St. Louis Blues, check that out over at The Athletic. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy yourself out there tonight at the home opener. How many is this for you? How many Blues home openers have you now covered?
I guess this will be number 20. Wow. Number 20, yeah. And just like the weatherman in the middle of the storm, I'm standing right next to the ice. I can give you guys the play-by-play here. They're cleaning the glass, getting it ready for the 19,000 fans tonight. So looking forward for this one.
Enjoy, man. They never get old. Have fun out there. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk with you again next week, JR.
Thanks, guys.
You got it. That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, you like that? Not going to change it up? Just go ahead and keep...
Do I like it? No. Can I complain about it anymore? I probably shouldn't because they've won 2 of their 3 games, and Buch has 3 goals and 4 points in 3 games.
I would love to go back through, though, and find out where did those goals come from?
Well, he scored the 2 goals versus Vegas. One was on the power play, and then the one he was the centerman because it was he and Kyrou with the 2-on-1, and he scored the goal. I don't remember the one on San Jose. I think that was the one that he just tried to pass it to Kyrou, and it went off of a goaltender's pad. So 2 of the 3 goals he has scored with Kyrou on the ice, but they've both been 2-on-1s. But you've generated the most offense as Pavel Buchnevich on the wing playing with Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas.
I think Pavel Buchnevich is a really, really good hockey player. And so it's not going to look terrible when he's out there at center because he's not a terrible hockey player. And I think that's something that sometimes gets lost in translation here. Is like, I'm not suggesting that you're suddenly getting a bad version of Buch whenever he's center. I just don't think you're getting the best version of Buch when you have him at center. And for me, I want to maximize the output from one of their highest paid players and from one of their best overall hockey players. And I think in some ways, Alex, they are. And this is what's so difficult about this conversation. There's some nuance that needs to be a part of this. One, they're not healthy right now. And so that does change things a bit. But if you've got the coach that's saying out here on one hand, he thinks the best version of Dylan Holloway is at center, and we all agree that the best version of Pavel Buchnevich, and I think the Blues in their heart of hearts would agree, the best version of Pavel Buchnevich is at winger. Well, this feels like a pretty simple fix. Thomas, Shin, and Holloway as your top 3 centermen with Foxa remaining on that 4th line, and you're just able to move Buch over at that point in time. I don't know. I don't know if this maybe is more about Shin. Maybe this is they don't believe that Shin is a second-line center at this point.
And I don't think it has anything to do with Shen's offense and everything to do with Shen's defense because, like, Pavel Buchnevich through these 3 games is a +5, which is tied for 7th best in the National Hockey League. He's right up there with Mark Stone and only 2 points shy of Mark Stone. And if you take Buch off of that center spot, you're putting Shen in the second-line center. Let's say you do put Holloway at the third-line center. That's an inexperienced player in the center position at the NHL level. Well, now you're defensively unreliable with 2 of your 4 lines.
Can I give you some expected numbers, Alex?
Sure.
The Bolduc, Booch, Kyrou line has an expected goal share. So when they're on the ice, how often would you expect the Blues to score compared to their opponent of 25%, which is tied for the worst on the team with the Kapanen and Holloway and Joseph line. So based on the amount of offense that they're actually generating when they're out there, it has not been good when Pavel Buchnevich has been as your second line center. So
You're not going to like this. You're not going to like this answer as a fellow nerd, but the Blues would say how many goals were scored when they were on the ice. Because I mean, they're going off of the 600 winning percentage. They're going to look at that and say, "Cool, how many goals were scored against Booch, Kyrou,
That's the
and
Randy
Bolduc?"
answer, right? Cool. You can have your expected goals. I'll go by my actual goals. I scored goals. You didn't.
Yeah,
I win.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, who had more goals? I did. You lose.
Expected goals.
It's 2-0.
Expected goals against last year. Second worst on the team. First worst on the team was Booch, Thomas, Kyrou. Second worst was Saad Shen Neighbors.
It's
so,
just
I don't know. They're getting points. They're winning.
It's hard to question, but
I don't like it.
I would like to question it.
To be fair, I think the winning percentage, because we have Walker in the lineup. If you see that winning percentage, that's what's huge.
You ain't wrong there.
I just think all of that is nonsense. It's all noise.
Just going back to last year, 27, 16, and 4 now with Nathan Walker in the lineup.
See?
I just
10 games above 500.
They cite the Booch at center. No, you just played better hockey.
No,
like the power play was much. I would love to know
because Booch was at center.
What is their winning percentage when they score a goal on the power play? Because I bet you it's every bit as high, if not higher, than Pavel Buchnevich. That doesn't mean it's correlated or the causation for it. Anyways, coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we're going to talk to the Minnesota Wild general manager,
Bill for a superstar.
Bill Guerin is going to join us here on the show. Man, I have really nerded out in the first 45 minutes. I got to chill. But coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. It's time for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
$1,500 off, 12-year warranty, and 0% financing. SwissAirSTL.com.
It's the Brown and Crouppen Morning After Daily Podcast, one of the longest running podcasts in St. Louis.
Guys, the Biker Bar is lit on Saturday afternoon in Defiance. Doug, have you ever been to the Biker Bar in Defiance?
Tiger Country.
Hikers are diehard Missouri Tiger fans.
Drink supporters.
You see entire sections at Ferrario Field. Guys dressed in black leather with chains.
Find the Morning After Podcast at TMASTL.com.
your local trusted expert for foundation repair and waterproofing. Book your free inspection at foundationrecoverysystems.com.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers.
Presented by Window World St. Louis.com. Simply the best for less.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. For a quick version of questions and answers, we got Bill Guerin, the Minnesota Wild general manager, joining us here in just a little bit. Let's start with this from the 314. Guys, the Dodgers lose last night. They're now tied in the NLCS 1-1. Do you think that was a sign of things to come, or will the Dodgers be able to rebound?
I think the Dodgers will rebound. I mean, that was a bullpen game, so kind of... I don't know if you expected that, although the bullpen has been great for the Dodgers. Yep. I expect that one to rebound and be tight. It's going to really come down to do their top pitchers go out there and perform when they take the mound?
They've got Walker Buehler in Game 3, which doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence. They've got Yamamoto, and then I would assume they'll go back to Jack Flaherty after that. They need to win that Yamamoto and Jack Flaherty.
And then you'll have to win one more where you don't have those guys.
Probably a bullpen game.
Yeah. I think they win in 6 still. I think they win either the Buehler start or the bullpen game. I do think you're going to see one of those games be a hiccup. I mean, your offense has to show up in those 2 games. Flaherty and Yamo, they can shut down the Mets. Your offense is going to have to show up when Buehler and the bullpen are in action.
Yeah. I still think they win. I think it might be 7, though. It might come down to that. This is a close series, man. The Dodgers have the obvious advantage with their offense, but their pitching is just... I know they just went through this crazy scoreless streak. The starting pitching is not deep, and I do wonder if that bullpen's going to be fried by the end of this thing. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Speaking of baseball, Juan Soto, guys, what do you think he will get in free agency, and will he be worth it?
I mean, we talked about him being worth it because he doesn't play defense very well. He's designated a hitter for probably teams moving forward, but for how the market goes, probably $300 million.
I think 400.
Yeah, I think he'll get more than that because he's so young. I think he'll make more than Judge.
He's going to be 20.
Judge got.
He's about to turn 26.
Yeah, he's going to get $400+ million. I think he'll end up being worth it. I think for at least half that contract, he'll be a defender. Now, he's not a great defender, but he's got such an incredible bat-to-ball skill and a great batter's eye. He's worth every penny that you pay him.
I do wonder if eventually you can move him to first.
It's possible. I mean, the Phillies did that with Harper.
Yeah.
So I could see it.
I wonder if they do that sooner rather than later in New York. They already have some questions on who their first baseman is.
Look at the first base market, and they're like, Walker, Goldschmidt, Hoskins. How about Soto?
Yeah, that's something that I do wonder if they would consider. And if they do, I think he'd be really good there. I do think he can be worth it. I think he can be worth it, though, if you have another star already ready to go with him.
Yeah.
He's not going to be worth it if you're a team that just wants to, hey, let's plop him in. He can be our superstar. No, as we've seen, you need talent around him. Having him and Judge is just such a great situation for the Yankees.
And the short porch.
It's perfect. He is a Yankee, dude. I think we've seen in this postseason, he fits perfectly there. Yeah. So I kind of hope he stays there. I would like to see him in that uniform.
I hope because of the Mets.
Oh, that would be great.
Just to make it real wild.
I think those are the 2 teams that'll be vying for services. I don't think there's going to be another contender. You guys agree with that?
It'd be fun if the Dodgers got involved. Just to, you know what, we are the Death Star.
Red Sox just called on. Like, hey,
that would be
money.
Amazing. I do not think he would be a good fit there, though. I think, personality-wise, I'm not sure. I guess, they had Manny Ramirez, so.
They had Big Papi and all those guys. I think he'd be fine there.
Yeah. I think it makes more sense, though, with the Yankees. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to talk to the Minnesota Wild general manager, Billy Guerin. He had a really interesting tenure early on where he had to go through all of these different decisions with the buyouts, and then he had to navigate, hey, how do we construct a team while trying to deal with the money that is on our books from these buyouts. They're getting towards the end of that. What does the next iteration of the Minnesota Wild look like, and how does he view the Central Division outlook for this season? Bill Guerin joins us next here on 101 ESPN.
Pay off your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth.
Who is HW Kia?
What dealer has brand new Kias with 0 down, 0 payments until next year, and 0% for 72 months?
Who is HW Kia?
What dealer will get you approved with a job clearing $450 per week?
Who is HW Kia?
Correct. Why buy a used vehicle when you can own a new HW Kia Forte LXS for just $19,995 with any trade? Currently stuck in a loan or lease? Come see Big D, the trade man, and get released. Get up to 120% fair market value for any trade. Go see your new HW Kia on the lot or the web? That doesn't mean you can't be driving it home tomorrow. 0 down, 0 payments until next year, and 0% up to 72 months on every clearly marked new HW Kia, but only at HWKia.com. On approved credit, not all will qualify, plus tax, title, license, and $587 title and registration processing fee. Negative equity refinance to new loan. Rebates and incentives to dealer. Not all will qualify. Through KMF, $13.89 per thousand borrowed. Offers not in combination. Expires 10/31/24. WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline on a Blues home opener game day to be joined by the Minnesota Wild general manager, Bill Guerin, former St. Louis Blue as well, played for the Blues back in 2006. Bill, we appreciate the time as always. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's always nice to be back in town and looking forward to the game tonight. It's good to be back, watching NHL hockey.
Bill, you've been through plenty of these opening nights now as a president of hockey operations and GM. Do you miss the feel of opening nights as a player?
I miss everything about being a player. I have the second best job in hockey. The first is being a player. And, at opening night was always, it was always great. It's amazing because you always get you get to wipe the slate clean every year and start fresh. And, having that opening night in front of your home fans is always a big deal. And, the energy's good. And, but hopefully we're ready to go. And, because the home teams always come out strong. So we're going to have our hands full.
Bill, I don't expect you to remember every single goal that you scored in your 1,200-plus game career, but that opening night with the Blues, you did score in the third period with 6 seconds left to go to force overtime. So it has to be a memorable one for you in St. Louis, right?
God, I've got to go back and look at that. I didn't even know. Who are we playing?
The Sharks, actually.
Oh, wait. Oh, shoot. No. I remember one goal I scored because we won 1-0. It was against Nashville, and it was like one of the prettiest goals I've ever scored in my career. I had never scored a goal like that since. But I'm going to have to go back and look at that one.
Kachuk had the assist on it. 6 seconds left in the third period. You forced overtime. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. You did go on to lose that game. It was on the road in San Jose.
I wasn't going to bring that up, though, Bill.
That's okay because I got traded to the Sharks later that season, so it actually helped us.
That's what I thought. It gave you the benefit. It gave the Blues the benefit, so it worked for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Bill Guerin is our guest here on 101 ESPN, now the Minnesota Wild general manager. Bill, we are incredibly early in this season. You guys are a few games in, as are the Blues. But what in particular has stood out to you, whether it's something that you've been watching your team or watching league-wide? Is there anything in particular that stood out to you early on in this season?
You know what? Honestly, nothing crazy, in any particular game or anything. But it's just the parity of the league is incredible. The fact that anybody can really beat anybody on a given night. It doesn't matter. You need to bring your best, and the game has just gotten so fast. It is, the skill level and the speed at which the guys can kind of perform at is really, it's unbelievable. It just keeps getting better and better and better. I think the game's in a really good spot.
Well, and Bill, when you look at the Central Division, it always feels like the Central Division is one of the toughest in hockey. Last season, it may have dipped a little bit, but man, just the start of this year, does it feel like Central is back to being the powerhouse in the NHL?
Yeah, it's definitely making its way back there. I mean, you see, I feel we got better. Chicago's getting better. Nashville got better. Utah's better. Dallas has been really good. St. Louis is really good. It's a grind. And, Winnipeg, too, I forget about them. They're all good teams. There's no easy nights in our division, and there's no easy nights in the league.
Bill, you guys decided to do something a few years back where there were a couple of buyouts, and you decided to put together what is a plan for what the future was going to hold for your organization to try to maintain the stability of it and try to build for the future a bit. You didn't really go through a full rebuild, though. You decided that hey, let's play for the now, but also for the future. What are some of the difficulties of that? The Blues are going through, obviously, they don't have the buyouts that you guys had, but they're doing something similar right now where they're kind of retooling on the fly. How difficult is that to do in the NHL?
Well, I think anytime you take a step back to kind of rebuild your team or retool your team in any way that you do it, it's difficult. My thing with a full rebuild is that you've got to be ready for years of pain. And you don't know when it's going to be over. My thing about kind of what St. Louis has done and what we've done is you've got to acknowledge when you have really good players, and you just don't want to get rid of them. So I look at St. Louis with Kyrou and Thomas, guys like that they can really build around. I looked at us with Spurgeon and Brodin and Eck, guys that have been here for a while. We could build around them and the picks that are coming and. So you can kind of do it if you already have a bit of a core established. So yeah, two similar processes. It really seems like, and Doug Armstrong is one of the best in the business out there, and he's a good friend, and he's just a super smart hockey guy. So I'm always watching what Army's doing.
Bill, how do you know? And this may be a silly question, but
even though he bought out my contract in Dallas, we're still good buddies.
It's nothing personal with Army. You know what? Let's go that direction for a second.
He actually gave me the contract too, so there's two ways to look at it.
So on that note, Bill, this offseason, Army did something that very few general managers do, which is hand out a couple of offer sheets. He talked about it afterwards and said, hey, it didn't matter who the general manager was of that team. I would have done it to my mother if that's what it took for me to get a couple of good players. What was your reaction when you saw that Doug Armstrong not only offer sheeted one player, which is a rarity in the NHL, but did so with multiple players from the same team?
Yeah, I had never seen it, and that's Doug. And his quote was bang on. He wouldn't care, and it's never personal. It's not. We don't do things like that. It's just all you're doing is trying to make your hockey team better. That's it. You're not worried about the other team. You're not worried about anything else. You just want to make your team better. And it was. And this is the other thing too. He's got the guts to be bold, and that's what you need. And when you have one of these jobs, or when you're in a position like we are, you have to be bold at certain times. And to me, I thought it was a really bold move. And you know what? His team is better today, and that's his job.
Well, and Bill, speaking of bold moves, BK brought up, the buyouts that you took over once you took over for the Minnesota Wild. And after you took over for this team, last year was the first year that the Minnesota Wild missed the postseason. And since we're talking about that rebuild and identifying when you have young players, how beneficial are the playoffs for a young group of players that you're trying to reset with?
That experience is so important when you're a player, and the earlier that you can get experiences like the playoffs, it makes you a stronger player right away, and it helps you as you move along in your career. Because when you're a young kid and you go into the playoffs for a first time and realize that there's actually another level to the NHL, it's really eye-opening. So, whether it's at the NHL level or even the American League level, we prefer to develop through a winning atmosphere.
We're talking to Bill Guerin for just another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. Bill, this may be almost a silly question, but the production is one thing. So you got a Matt Boldy or Brock Faber, and you can see the points that they're putting up, right, and the minutes that they're playing every single night. But for you as an executive, somebody that's evaluating this on a night-in, night-out basis, what are you looking for in young players to know when they've taken that step, or when you can see, okay, this is a guy that we will be building around for the next 5 years, even if the production isn't there just yet?
A big part of it for me is the character. Their character. How do they carry themselves? How do they, handle difficult situations? How do they compete? How do they interact with their teammates? All these things go into the decisions because, it's a big investment. It's a big risk. But the more homework you do and the more you get to know your young players, the easier the decision gets. And, for me, knowing Matt and Brock as well as I do now, the decision to invest in them wasn't a difficult one. And, the character and the performance on the ice and all the things that go into being a successful player have to be there.
Final question. We'll get you out of here on this, Bill, and it's the toughest one we've asked you so far today. When you're back in St. Louis, is there anything in particular that, I know it's a very short period of time that you're in town, but is there a restaurant or anything that you make sure that you hit before you get out of here?
I just like drinking fresh Budweiser.
My man, at Big Walt's house, right?
Right out of it. It's right. I just remember being here and we were looking around for houses and all this stuff. And the one common thing was everybody had a tap in their basement. And I was like, all right, well, I know I only have a 1-year contract, but we're going to finish our basement. We're going to put a tap of Budweiser down there. And that's exactly what we did. And Born on Date's 2 days ago. So that's one thing that I really look forward to.
Also, Bill, I pulled that goal up against the Nashville Predators. You're right, man. That is about as sick of a goal as you'll see.
Never done before and never done after.
They showed a video of John Davidson.
I was the most surprised guy in the building.
They showed a video of John Davidson, and the look on his face says everything you need to know about that goal.
Yeah. He was just thinking we're going to get a first-round pick for this guy.
Hey, Bill.
And they did, and it was David Perron, so we thank you.
Yep. That's it.
Bill, appreciate the time as always, man. Been great to catch up with you. Best of luck in every game other than tonight, the rest of the way. Whenever you're not playing the Blues, we wish you nothing but the best. We'll talk with you again soon, my man.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Absolutely. As Bill Guerin, Minnesota Wild general manager, we sincerely appreciate his time joining us here on the show, as always. I find it to be really interesting, man. You see a couple of these teams in the Central Division, both trying to kind of go about it the same way. Now, the Minnesota Wild have had success. They've had a couple of 100-point seasons under Bill Guerin, despite the limitations of having those two buyouts that are still on their books. I think, is next year the first year that they no longer have that on their books?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I think that's still on their books, but it's only a couple $100,000 compared to it being
basically off
like the $15 million.
Okay,
yeah.
So they're about to be able to start building in a way that has been different than what they've been.
$833,000 for the next 3 years.
So effectively nothing. Yeah. That's more or less off of their books. This is a rarity in today's game where you do try to build this specific way. I'm fascinated to see if these two teams can make it work, man, because it's not an easy way to go about it.
Well, and that's why I had you've heard me talk about the importance of just getting the postseason for some of these younger guys. And I know Thomas and Kyrou have already been there. But, I mean, Bill Guerin took over a team in 2019. I think August was when he was hired. He buys out Suter and Parise, and they make the playoffs every single year with the exception of last season. Now, they get bounced in the first round, but they make the playoffs every single year, and they made one playoff round go to Game 7. And now you're talking about Kirill Kaprizov, you're talking about Joel Eriksson X, Spurgeon, the names that he just listed. They've got the playoff experience. You've stayed competitive while the team was handcuffed with a flat cap where they were spending $20 million on dead cap space.
They have basically 25% less than everybody else.
And now they're about to enter a window with guys who have 4 out of 5 years postseason experience, still young, to where they have about $20+ million to spend in free agency.
I think every fan in the NHL, whether you're a fan of these teams or not, should be rooting for the Blues in the Wild to make this work, because it's so much better for fans to not have to go through what the Sharks just did.
Yes.
Like, what the Sharks just did is miserable for everybody for multiple seasons. What you're seeing Detroit do right now, dude, they're still not out of the rebuild. And we don't know how much longer it's going to take. Buffalo went through stuff like that. Columbus went through stuff like that. You don't have to go to the very bottom and stay there for 7 years to be able to get back somewhere near the top.
Yeah.
And so for me, just as a viewer of hockey and as a fan of this team, I so vastly prefer what the Blues are doing. I think it is a better way to go about it. It's something that I say in baseball as well. I don't think you have to tank to be able to get back up to the top of the league. You can go about things in a different way where you're picking like 5th. You can still get really good players there, win 78 games and be competitive and have a roster that is going out there every day that your fans actually want to go see, and not sell like the Brendan Donovans of the world that are 27, 28 years old that still have 5 good years of their career. Too many teams are doing that, and they sell it to their fans as this is the only way that we can make it work. It's just not true. You don't have to be that bad that long to make things work. It's a cheap way to go about it. That's what it really is.
It is. And anytime you do this, retool, rebuild, whatever you're going to call it, luck goes into it. Minnesota got lucky finding Kirill Kaprizov late in the draft when nobody was willing to take a chance on a kid in Russia that they weren't sure if he was going to come over. But you also heard him talk about being aggressive. And just look through the transaction history.
Another one that they got lucky on. 45th overall selection.
Absolutely. Dude. Look at the transaction history of Bill Guerin with the Minnesota Wild. He was always finding ways to make trades, whether it was bringing in a Jason Zucker or trading him away, bringing in a older Eric Stahl, a Tyson Jones. He's always been aggressive with some of those depth pieces so that he can keep teams competitive. But when he feels like he's ready to actually go for it, they trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. They make trades for first-round draft picks that turn out to be players that are significant for them. They're never just sitting on their hands saying, well, we'll see if we get the draft lottery this year, because that luck typically doesn't pay off, and you've just wasted a whole year of trying to stay competitive with your roster.
If you missed any of our conversation with Bill Guerin, I think he's one of the best interviews in the NHL. Check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Credit to Alex, who's the one that made that thing happen. Really good interview with Bill Guerin. I'm sure you'll hear some of that on the pregame show tonight as well. Alex will have that for you starting tonight at 5:30 right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. In 15 minutes, we'll talk a little bit more about the Blues. Which of these positions is most important to find an answer for the St. Louis Blues before the start of next season? We'll talk about that coming up in 15 minutes. NFL Quick Hitters is next year on 101 ESPN.
It's time for another moment in Blues history.
On this date in 2015, the Blues would hand the Oilers their 4th straight loss with a 4-2 victory in Edmonton. Jori Lehtera would score in the first period and then pick up an assist on Tarasenko's goal in the second. With a 2-1 lead, Stastny and Steen would add some insurance goals with a power play goal and even strength goal. Brouwer also picked up 2 assists, while Brian Elliott earned the win in net.
This date in Blues history was powered by Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. For all your HVAC needs, ClassicAirCare.com.
Window Nation customers have been singing our praises for years. With fast, local service and an industry-leading 96% customer satisfaction rating, it's no wonder.
I researched window companies for the last year to see what the average prices were and the quality of work. Window Nation nailed both.
Buy 2 windows, get 2 free with 0 down and no interest or payments for 24 months. Hurry, this offer ends soon. Schedule a free estimate now. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION.
Hey, St. Louis, do you ever get tired of your job feeling like just a job and not a career? Do you want benefits, a pension, and the ability to advance in a lucrative profession? Leave your current job behind and apply today to become an install floor layer with the Carpenters Union. Excellent classroom and on-the-job training in a lucrative industry means you'll continue to have opportunities to learn, to enjoy fantastic benefits, and to make money towards your pension. Begin your new career today. Visit apply.ficstl.org today.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
You guys are never going to believe this. Davante Adams was traded
to the Steelers, right?
My guy was wrong. They were in. They were in on it.
What a source.
They were in on it to the sense of they called and like, yeah, Davante doesn't want to come play for you.
Okay, cool. Had something to do with it.
Thanks.
I think it also had a lot to do with, hey, the Jets were just willing to take on the entire contract the rest of the year. So Davante Adams is going to the New York Jets. This comes after last night. Mike Williams, according to his quarterback, who threw him under the bus following the game, Mike Williams apparently ran the wrong route.
Yeah, sure.
Allegedly. On the final play of the game, in other words, Aaron Rodgers threw a bad pass. He looked bad because it was an interception, so he's got to throw somebody under the bus. Clearly, it's Mike Williams' fault because Aaron Rodgers has never done anything wrong, even though he hasn't thrown 300 yards in a game in like 3 years. Anyways, neither here nor there.
That doesn't sound like Aaron.
Zach Wilson has thrown for 300 yards more recently than Aaron Rodgers.
Dude, watching Get Up today, sorry to sidetrack it here, the narrative of like Aaron Rodgers is pissed off at his entire offense because they're not doing the right thing. I've seen a lot of Aaron Rodgers throwing low balls, high balls, and into the hands of defenders rather than seeing receivers drop passes.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to get hit. That's what's going on.
He got hit a lot last night.
He doesn't want to get hit anymore. It reminds me a lot of Brady in his final season with both the Patriots and the Bucs, where you knew like, ooh, okay, this is not going to work any longer. Brady ended up figuring it out the next year because he had weapons again, and he was like, "Oh, this is fun. I'm going to throw it deep."
Yeah, really, he just wanted out of New England.
Yes, and then in the final year with the Bucs, he's like, "Okay, I don't know that he's going to want to do this any longer." Rodgers isn't that good anymore. He's a mediocre quarterback. He's not bad, but he's like the 18th to 20th best quarterback in the league right now. I don't think this trade, to get back to the original topic, I don't think the trade for Davante Adams changes a whole lot for the Jets. I think it makes them better. Davante Adams is a good player. He's going to make them better, and he has immediate chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. But this isn't the same Davante Adams, and it sure as hell is not the same Aaron Rodgers as when they played together, 5 years ago. Alex, for you, does this trade for Davante Adams, a likely third-round pick going in return to the Raiders, change much of anything for the AFC race?
No, it doesn't, because I've seen 6 games of the Jets right now, and yes, Davante Adams comes in, gives you that chemistry, and it opens up Garrett Wilson a little bit more because now defenses have to game plan for them a little bit different. But that defense still hasn't been great, and I can look around the AFC, and I look at Baltimore and say, well, Baltimore is night and day better than the Jets. I look at Houston. Houston's night and day better than the Jets. So, no, I still think now maybe you've given yourself a better chance of being a wild card team in the AFC, but I don't look at this as now they're the superior team in the AFC East. Buffalo just spanked you around last night.
Yeah, I think this maybe raises their ceiling to be a wild card team. I don't think they were a playoff team without Davante Adams, and I still think that's in the realm of possibilities. I think best case scenario, you're now looking at like the 6, 7 seed. They're not going to do anything meaningful in the playoffs. They don't have a good enough quarterback. That's their biggest issue, is their quarterback just isn't the same Aaron Rodgers.
They don't have a good offensive line. They don't have a good enough quarterback to overcome that offensive line. And when you have those two things in place, not a great place to be. All right, on the other side of that game last night, the Buffalo Bills now have effectively a 2-game lead in the AFC East. They're 4-2 on the season. Josh Allen finished with 215 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air and only 18 yards on the ground. And I thought he completely dominated the game.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Like, it's crazy how his numbers have gone down this year, and I've actually gained even more of an appreciation for who Josh Allen is as a quarterback. They haven't been perfect over the last couple of weeks. They got boat raced by the Baltimore Ravens 2 weeks ago when I bet on them in our Pick'em Challenge.
Well, that was your fault more than their fault.
Did not go well. Here's their upcoming schedule. Titans, Seahawks, Dolphins, Colts. There's a very high likelihood they go 4-0 in those games and are 8-2 by the time that they go up against the Chiefs prior to their bye week for a game that very well could determine the number 1 seed in the AFC. Alex, he doesn't have a whole lot of weapons right now in Buffalo. The defense has some flaws for sure, but where do you rank the Buffalo Bills compared to the other top contenders in the AFC right now?
I would put them behind the Chiefs, Ravens, and Texans. I still feel like they need one more weapon for Josh Allen. It's wild to me that guy has not thrown an interception yet this season still.
He's been pretty fortunate in that regard. He's trying.
Absolutely has, but some of this has been, you've got Coleman and Shakir, and that's about it that you're able to throw the ball to. I look at them, though, as the better team than teams like the Cincinnati Bengals, who I know are putting up offense, but like they, again, can't get two sides of the ball in the same game. And then
defense stinks.
Everybody beyond the Bengals, I'm not going to invest any stock into, because I know the Pittsburgh Steelers are 4-2. That's fine, but they're going to go to Russell Wilson right now. It's about to fall in their face. The Colts, that's great. They're 3-3.
Yeah,
but it's because of Joe Flacco, and Flacco's going back to the bench. So
their defense is the worst in the NFL.
And there's nobody in the AFC East right now, whether it's the Dolphins or Jets, that I'd be afraid of. So if I'm the Bills, I'm the 4th best team.
I think I agree with that. I think they're maybe this is odd to say, are they the lone team in the second tier in the AFC? Like, I think the top 3 are, well, I guess if you wanted to split the Ravens.
I would put the Chiefs in the top tier on their own. I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I do think at this point it is fair to have them as just like the number 1 team, considering they've beat most of these other teams in the second tier.
That's fair. Chiefs 1. Second tier is probably, for me, the same as what Alex had it as Ravens and Texans. But then I think the third tier right now is just Buffalo.
I would have Buffalo in that tier, personally.
Oh, and that third. Yeah. See, I don't know if, we've seen them lose both to Baltimore and
the Texans game was close, a 50-50 proposition. The Ravens one, I think
you need a weapon for Josh Allen to get into that tier for me, because though he has played well, and I agree, I thought he dominated that game last night as well. He feels more of like a game manager now, but when he needs to, he can win the football game for you. Like that last play last night from scrimmage that they were on. Just a quick kind of quarterback counter. He turns on the Jets, gets past the defensive end, who actually didn't play that all that bad. So I think when I look at the Bills, I think they're clearly behind those 3 teams in the AFC. They'll be fun in the playoffs, but but I don't think they're going to do anything meaningful because they got to have a number one wide out.
The Bills needed a weapon, right? We agree with that?
Yeah.
The Ravens need a weapon?
Yep.
Yeah.
The Chiefs need a weapon?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The top 3 teams in the AFC right now, arguably, all need the same thing. And there are going to be guys that are available. Like, Amari Cooper is I believe, very likely to be traded at this year's deadline. If you're the Jaguars and you can find a way to make it work contractually, you should be looking to trade Christian Kirk this year at the trade deadline because you're a terrible team. You might as well get the asset in return for that guy. Like, there's going to be some decent wide receivers that are potentially available. Like Darius Slayton. Not a great receiver, but a decent one. He can help a team. For the New York Giants right now, they're 1-5, or they're 2-4. They're not doing anything meaningful this year. By the deadline, that should be a team that's looking to trade him. If you're the Panthers, I don't know if you're for sure going to do this, but hey, man, I don't think Bryce Young is the guy. I think it might be a couple of years before you find the guy. Deontay Johnson, do you just cash in that chip at this year's deadline? He's on an expiring deal.
What about DeAndre Hopkins with the Titans?
There you go. There's another one. There's going to be some guys that are available. Somebody on the text line said, guys, there's rumors that maybe DK Metcalf could be traded. I don't see that. I'd be surprised.
You're 3-3 if you're the Seahawks. Why would you?
And the West stinks.
And they're a team that believes so much in culture. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily the move that they should or will make, but if they did,
or if they wanted to move Tyler Lockett, I mean,
sure.
At least you can move that piece that's a veteran.
Either one of them. These are all options that, like, they swing what this playoff race is going to look like. Because imagine if DK Metcalf went to the Buffalo Bills. I don't think the Adams trade moved much. That trade would for me.
That would be
awesome. It would move a whole lot for me.
I would be very excited about that one.
Yeah, that's one that could completely alter the trajectory of where the Bills are at right now in the AFC. And instead of them being, maybe in that second or third tier, now we're talking about them as potentially being the best team, again, in the AFC. It's going to be a fun race down the stretch.
I hope the Bills get DK Metcalf and the Chiefs go get Amari Cooper, and we are just set up for a just powerhouse of a finisher in the AFC.
Be fun, man.
That hopefully is not in the first round.
It'll be a lot of fun. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, if I put together a list of these 3 positions, top line winger, second line center, and top pair defensively on the left side, which of those 3 spots is most important to have an answer for by this time next year? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Blues fans, send us a pic of you repping your Blues.
Taylor Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. 3 Cardinals are finalists for Gold Gloves, as announced by Major League Baseball in Rawlings today. Masyn Winn is up for the Gold Glove at shortstop. Nolan Arenado is up for the Gold Glove at third base, and Brendan Donovan for the utility Gold Glove. And the Blues will be back in action tonight as it's their home opener as they take on the Minnesota Wild. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 6:30. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet, Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So I'm going to give you 3 positions, Alex. Top line winger, second line center, and top pair defensively on the left side. Out of those 3 positions, which is most important for the Blues to have an answer by this time next year?
Second line center. I had to process it there for a couple of moments. This is going to sound terrible to say, but this is me that you're listening to, and I'm 3 games in. I think you already found your top pair left-handed defenseman.
Wow!
I mean,
Nick Leddy?
Yeah, no, not Nick Leddy. Not Nick Leddy. I think Broberg can.
Alex is head over heels.
I am. I mean, I am sold.
Dude, when you fall in love, you fall hard.
I mean, it's hard not to, guys.
What was it? Did your wife get love bombed when you guys first met?
She got loved by multiple times. I got 3 kids. Come on, man.
That's not what I meant.
Whoa. Yeah, probably. I fall and I fall hard, guys, and it hurts, but
like Logan Brown did it to you.
Okay, look.
This is different.
That was a moment of weakness.
I think Cappy did it in the preseason.
No, Cappy never did it.
Verona definitely did it, though.
Verona did because
this whole room.
Verona was the equivalent of somebody telling me that girl's a 10, and then you see her, and it's like,
we lost it over Verona.
Yeah, somebody told me you could score 40
had a great
goals.
Tinder profile until you saw him in person.
But, I mean...
We got catfished.
It's hard not to with Philip Broberg, guys. I mean, I'm not even going off of the points. The last time the Blues had a defenseman that played the way that Philip Broberg has played is Jay Bouwmeester.
Except he's not the defender that Bouwmeester was, but he's got definitely more offensive
But here's the thing. He could be the defender Jay Bouwmeester was because he's 23 years old. I'm not going to reel this one in. Jay Bouwmeester was great because of 2 assets. His stick length, his reach to break up plays, Broberg, check, and the ability to skate. Guys, how many guys... You could stop reeling in this right now, Catfish.
Let him swim.
Jesus, Swordfish, calm down over there. You don't want to get eaten. How many people have we talked to that has said Broberg is probably one of the best skaters on Edmonton's team? Yeah. And he was comped to Jay Bouwmeester. Those are the 2 things that Bouwmeester did so well. He killed plays because of his size, and he was able to skate out of danger with his speed. Broberg has shown you that in 3 games. Now, is it going to dip off? Probably. He's 23 years old. Typically, and Al McInnes is the one that said this, typically you're looking at 300 to 400 games in the NHL before you really get to know what a defenseman is. So you've got a little bit with Philip Broberg, but if he doesn't pan out to be the top pair defenseman, I'll admit the failure there. But you haven't had this since Jay Bouwmeester, so I don't need to know that.
I'm totally with you, by the way. I love what we've seen so far from Broberg. It's only been 3 games, and so I was the one that first made the comparison to Jay Bouwmeester, and I'm talking about just in terms of the skating ability and the size. Stylistically, I do think he profiles to be a similar type of player to Bouwmeester. It's just hard to compare anybody to a potential Hockey Hall of Famer.
And I also think it's important to emphasize, I'm not saying he's going to be a elite star defenseman. Top pair and elite defenseman are 2 very different things.
Sure, he's not going to be Petro.
No, he's not going to be Petro. He's not going to be Miro Heiskanen or Cale Makar. But you know what he's going to be? He's going to be the guy that you can go throw out there, play 23-plus minutes a night, and feel comfortable with him on the ice.
If I had told you this same question 3 months ago, though, would you have said that the top pair defensively on the left side was the most important to answer by the start of next season?
Yeah, I believe T-Bone and I both were the ones that agreed. You've got to find somebody who could play with Colton Parayko as your top pair defenseman.
It's pretty damn impressive that they might have found that. Yeah. I'm not where you are, where I'm already ready to say they have definitely found that. I don't know. But I think they have an option for the first time in a long time. For the first time since Petro left, they have potentially 2 legit top pair defensemen. Leddy can masquerade there. He has at times in the past played well on that top pair.
Leddy bides you time for your prospects.
He's not a top pair defenseman in the league. No. If you had traded him to a legitimate contender, they probably would play him on their second line or second pair, maybe third pair, depending on what the team is that he's going to. Broberg has the potential to be that. Among the other two options, Alex, because you think that they have already solved that, so it's almost a moot point to discuss it. What do you think is more important, second line center versus top line winger?
I think it's the second line center because the top winger, the Blues are probably going to tell you is internal, whether it's Buchnevich when he gets that spot, or maybe they believe Jimmy Snuggerud can be somebody who could score goals with Robert Thomas. But the second line center to me is the most important thing because it opens up the options for your roster right now. You can move Buch up to the wing. You can slow play other guys and not force guys into positions that they're not comfortable with. I think Dvorsky's the guy for that, but I would like to know, and I think that is the most important for this team to progress forward to figure out by the end of the season.
See, it's interesting because I originally was hoping that would be the spot going into the season, or honestly going into the offseason. I think the answer for me, the one that they need to figure out this season is, do they have a top-line winger? And it's because, one, I think Broberg will ultimately become that guy that we're talking about. I don't think it'll be this year. But I also know it takes a while for defensemen to develop. Yep. And that is one reason why he's not number one for me on this conversation, or that left side spot isn't. I don't think you're going to get enough of a runway for Dvorsky this season to go into next offseason and say, okay, we definitely have a number two center. I don't think that's till next year. You can look at the winger spot and go, okay, is Jake Neighbors a top-line winger that can be the Zach Hyman role and score like 30 to 40 goals for us? Okay, could we bump Kyrou back up there and have him play with Robert Thomas and see if he can get to that 30, 40 goal mark as the winger? Or can we bump Buch back up to that wing spot and see if he can become that 30-goal scorer that we know he is and become a shutdown guy alongside Robert Thomas, but also have the offense capabilities? That's the one spot that I can circle on their roster the way it's currently constructed and say, you're going to get a full season to experiment with all of those that I said, even including maybe even throwing Holloway up there. I don't think he's a top-line guy, but you can throw him up there and find out. I think that's the spot you get to learn about. I don't know if you see Dvorsky till like post-All-Star break, and if that's the case, am I really going to look at that and say, okay, for a month and a half, 2 month stretch, am I really going to read all into that and say, okay, we definitely have or definitely don't have a number two center? No, and I think it takes more time for the defenseman to develop. So for me, I think the one spot they can learn this season definitively is, do we have a top-line winger on our roster, or do we need to go find that?
Yeah, and I was including the offseason as well. So, like, they could go conceivably trade for one of these guys as well.
I like the way you're thinking.
I think it's winger. I do. Because I don't know that there's anybody internally that profiles that. To your point, T-Bone, I think Dvorsky can be a second-line center for you. I don't know that he will be for sure, but he has the potential to be that. I think you're right, Alex. At a minimum, Broberg has the potential to be a top pair defensively for this team. I don't think they have anybody right now that profiles as like a number one winger on a contending team. I like Pavel Buchnevich a ton. I think I like him more than most Blues fans do. That's not to diminish anybody's love for Buch, but that guy's amazing. Maybe he's a center. He has the potential to be a top-line winger on a contending team. Can he be the number one guy, though? Like the go-to guy? I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of like in baseball. We talk about how you kind of need that all-around player, right? Hits for average, hits for power, plays good defense as well. The best teams in the world have that guy on their roster. I don't know that the Blues have that guy right now when it comes to who they are on the wing. I think they're still potentially missing that player. That can be the power play threat, the one-time shot, everything on that top line. I don't think that's going to be Snuggerud. I do not believe that is anybody that is currently in their system. I think the best chance you've got is Buch, and right now they're so stuck with him as the second-line center. We're not going to find out if that's the case. I think they might end up trading for or signing a guy to be that spot in their lineup. It's the one area that I don't know that you're going to be able to provide that from your system.
And I didn't know we were going with because to me, that winger is a exterior player. It's not a player in your system. I mean, I know there's people excited about Snuggerud, and maybe Snuggerud's got the shot, but does he have the hockey IQ to play with a guy like Robert Thomas? I think Buch can be a 35-goal scorer as the winger. I just don't know if you're ever really going to see that. You might see him as a second-line winger because you have those mismatches. They don't have a guy that's playing with Robert Thomas that can score 40 goals in their system. That's going to be an exterior move, and that's going to be via trade or a free agency signing when they're ready to compete.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And the reason why I wanted to ask the question today heading into the home opener is because this time last year, there were so many questions that you couldn't even pinpoint like where they needed to specifically supplement the roster. It was everywhere. They just had holes everywhere. And so that was a talent accumulation phase. Mm-hmm. It was like, hey, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And what stuck was, man, Jake Neighbors is really good. This guy might be, I don't know if he's a long-term top line winger, but I think he's a top 6 winger long-term. At a minimum, he's a guy that's going to be in your top 3 lines.
I think, sorry to cut you off, I think Jake Neighbors could be that guy for you once you find the shooter.
As a top line winger.
As a top line winger. The problem is they're so one-dimensional because nobody's afraid of the shot that they're focusing on the net front presence by Jake Neighbors.
That's what last year presented to this team. It gave them the opportunity to find out, okay, Neighbors is somebody that we can build around. We already had Thomas and Kyrou and Buchnevich in here, and now you locked in Buch long-term to be a part of this. You just keep throwing guys that are a part of the core long-term, and this year I think Broberg has become one of those players. I think Holloway has a chance to become one of those players. And now it's easier to pinpoint, okay, where are they still deficient, either in the system or on the current roster? I think those are probably the spots. Second line center, I've got questions. Top pair defensively or second pair defensively on the left side, still have some questions there. And then certainly the top line winger, still some questions. We'll see if somebody emerges. Yeah. Last year we got surprised by Jake Neighbors. This year maybe somebody will emerge and we'll lock down one of those spots by the end of the season.
618 asked a really interesting question. Said if you had Ryan O'Reilly back on this team, would you have him as your second line center?
Yes.
No question. $4.5 million is what he signed for. Probably one of the years that the Blues weren't willing to give him. I mean, that's your second line center.
That being said, though, how old is Ryan O'Reilly now?
33. He'll be 35 going on 36 by the end of his contract.
I mean,
now, mind you, if you have Ryan O'Reilly, you aren't pulling off the offer sheet deal. Because you wouldn't have had the cap space.
And I don't know that they bring back Buch. And the reason why is just because there is only so much money that you can hand out to the top six in your lineup. And if he's going to make, $5 million, it does present some challenges in terms of what you're able to do elsewhere. They also didn't know Torrey Krug was going to go on LTIR, which would have really changed the way that they had to look at their long-term outlook. The O'Reilly thing was, I think it was the right time for both sides to go in separate directions, given where O'Reilly is in his career and where the Blues were at that point in time with their retool. But to answer the question directly, yes, he would absolutely make your team better, and he would be your second-line center today. At the time, though, I did understand that one. The Perron one I had a bigger problem with them moving on from, but this one I didn't.
Ryan O'Reilly, I think you'd be more stuck in terms of your salary situation than where you're at right now, because you wouldn't be able to make some upgrades in terms of what the future looks like. You'd be focusing in on, well, it's win now because we've got this contract tied into what we already have on the roster.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. This is an interesting question. Maybe we can kind of flesh it out a little bit more tomorrow. BK, if you did this exact same exercise for the Cardinals, how would it look? In other words, what would the variables need to be that you would solve this offseason and by the end of next year? I think the biggest thing, man, is just do you have a middle of the order? Does it exist on the roster as currently constructed? Because I think Brendan Donovan's a really good player. I think Newbar is a good player. I think Masyn Winn is a very good player. But none of these guys are 3-4 hitters on a contender. Nobody. I think, strangely enough, the guy that they might trade this offseason, Ivan Herrera has the potential to be that. Yeah, you look at what he was offensively this year.
He can't throw.
I think people have undersold just how good Ivan Herrera was as a bat this year. The catching stuff, we got to work on it. But as a bat, he was excellent for the Cardinals this year. I think Burleson profiles best as a 2 or 6 hole hitter long term. I don't know that you have anybody right now on your roster that's a true 3 or 4 hole hitter. So to me, those are the things that you really need to find out. It should be Jordan Walker. It should be Nolan Gorman. We'll see if they can do it. But that would be my biggest thing that I would like to see answered by the end of next year.
Go ahead, T-Bone, because you were thinking what I was thinking.
With Wynn's home run power, I was told about in the opening segment. That sounds like a 3-hole hitter.
Is this team is looking for a 3-hole hitter to build their organization
25 to 30 home run
their
pop.
Offense around. We should be clear here. That's how you build your offense.
Not the face of the franchise.
About building a team. Okay. You guys want to win home run derbies. I want to win baseball games. So I'm going to have the superstar that's playing.
The teams that win the home run derby are winning in the postseason.
You actually had the player, and it didn't help win. So
yeah, you guys go enjoy.
I'm glad we were on the save wavelength there.
You looked at me, and I said, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna let T-Bone cook."
Enjoy your 35 home run guy, Nolan Gorman, that strikes out 37% of the time. I will enjoy my Masyn Winn,
I'll enjoy
who hits
those
20 to 25 while playing Gold Glove defense, stealing 20 bags, and hitting 280.
And you know what we'll be saying next year, man. Only they had that 35 home run hitter in the middle of the lineup, just like that top winger for Robert Thomas. Yep. If only.
He's Alex, this T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, by the way, that does not mean that Robert Thomas isn't the face of the franchise, that they're missing that.
Yeah, but he's a 100-point player. That's the equivalent to the 35.
He's not going to be a 100-point player if he doesn't have somebody that scores 40 goals on his way.
So you're saying if you get a middle-of-the-order bat, that makes Masyn Winn a 35 home run hitter?
No, because that's not how the point system. Coming up next, the Junk Show here on 101
What the hell just
ESPN.
happened?
We're going to talk to the chairman of the St. Louis Blues, Tom Stillman, here in just a moment. So it'll be a quick junk drawer today. I've got a couple of stories for you guys about my son, who is now 15 months old, and he is a terror, an absolute terror. In our house, nothing is sacred anymore. It's all his. He gets to do what he wants there. I am merely one of his roommates, and he determines what takes place in the Kiley household. So yesterday, Alex, he's hanging out, doing his thing, running back and forth, being crazy, whatever, being a 15-month-old. And we've got these pumpkins, and they're fake pumpkins. They're the ones that have the little light on the inside, and he thinks they are the coolest thing in the world. He is enamored by pumpkins. It is officially pumpkin spice season for T-Bone and for my son. That means running around with these two lancers everywhere. So he's running around with this thing. We don't really think much of it. He does it all the time. He goes in. My wife's doing something in the bathroom. She's like washing her face or whatever. He walks in with her. Again, don't think anything of it. This is not weird. This is something that Luca does all the time. Because, as you know, Alex, as a father, you don't get free time anymore. Privacy time in the bathroom or whatever else you're doing.
That's why you lock them out. Just have their fingers underneath the door and be like, Daddy, let me in.
Luca has now started pounding on the door when you do that.
They kick on it.
So he walks in. He takes this pumpkin, which fits apparently perfectly into our toilet. Where the seat's down, plops right in. Yep. And that's what he decides to do. And now he's just taking it like a plunger.
Nice.
Up and down with the pumpkin.
Splash zone warning.
So that's the first thing we get. That ended up getting thrown away accordingly.
Oh, I should have kept it.
So that was last night.
It's your pumpkin now.
This morning, my wife's not going to like that I told this story. I'm getting everything ready for the day, right? My wife's laying in bed. She's got Luca with her. She's cuddling, whatever. At the time, he was asleep, and then he wakes up. She did not realize that. She was cuddling with him. She thought she had a good grasp of him. He somehow finagles his way away. Our bed's pretty tall, and so he decides it's time for me to get off the bed. We're not entirely sure how he did this. I don't know if he jumped, Alex. I don't know if he, he's pretty good about kind of sneaking his way down things now. He goes downstairs and whatnot on his own. So maybe he was great with it. But she hears a plop. Wakes up immediately, stares over to the side of the bed, and just sees Luca over there smiling at her. She's like, how the hell did you get down there?
Yep.
Thank God he wasn't hurt. Everything was okay. It is never ending, dude.
No. Yes, this is it.
It's just constant chaos at our house right now. The other day, we went over to our in-laws, and he was going up and down this slide that we had inside for, no joke, 45 minutes. Wasn't tired afterwards, nothing. Just
there's no tired
Energizer
anymore.
bunny at all times.
There's no tired anymore. It's just always on the go. They find ways to... They find ways to do something that you didn't actually realize human beings do. What my girls do now is we've got our couch next to our window, and they like to play behind it, and they like to play hide and seek. And so they were standing behind it, didn't know where they were, and so all of a sudden you hear just this, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And so I go behind the couch. My 2-year-old Emma had lifted up the vent cover.
Sure.
Thought it would be fun to put her foot down there. And the next thing you know, there was a little person's body that was halfway outside of the vent and halfway inside of the vent. And she was banging on the window behind her, going, Daddy! Also, you said the plop off of the bed.
Oh,
Imagine what it hears when you go 3 or 4 plops, because they go up and down our basement stairs. And I was downstairs already, and they started. So we have a gate,
sure, yeah,
lifts,
same thing.
close.
Baby gate.
They know how to go under it. So I'm downstairs, and I hear I'm like, what the hell was that? It's typically they throw toys down there, and I just thought it was one of the toys. Nope, it was my daughter. She just did a tumble all the way down. And then I walk out there, and I'm thinking, she's laying on the ground like this. No, she's like,
yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious, right?
Yeah. And then you got to try and convince them why that's not okay to do. So
somebody on the text line from the 314 said, my son is the same age as BK's. His stories helped me realize that my son isn't the only one. Nah, man, we're all in this together. We need some kind of a society to bring us together.
We need a podcast where it's new parents that talk about their lives.
We could have a YouTube chat.
Called Dad Pod, something like that.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
Would be.
Dad Pod. Coming to a podcast.
Probably in 7 years.
Near you.
I mean,
in about 7 years.
it's not my cup of tea, but
Well, no, you're
a lot of
a
people
child
like it,
at heart,
you know.
so it should be good.
I would imagine there are a few people in our audience that have similar stories or similar experiences very recently.
You could probably
to
do
the
a
ones that we just
whole
had.
3-hour
It'd be
show
great.
on
Yeah, I was
just
gonna say, it'd be great for a podcast to just like take emails from people that have questions about their parenting skills
Somebody
and
else
ask if
from
it's
the,
them.
from the 636 said, guys, this is a great dose of birth control. One of my...
No, see, it's the polar opposite of it. Because, like, you see those, and you're like, oh, my gosh. But then they smile at you, and you're like, oh, you're the cutest thing in the world.
Yeah, but then you can hand them back when they're not yours.
Well.
That's what makes it work, right? I think the grandparents is the best job in the world. Because you get what you're talking about, you get that still because you have, the natural love and instincts of being a grandparent for a grandchild. But also, when you're done.
Oh, yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
I'm not up throughout the night.
No, the best part is
tantrum. If there's a tantrum taking place here, go to mommy.
The best part is when they have an explosion in their diaper and grandma or grandpa's holding them, and then they're like, pooped. I'm like, no, you're holding him or her. No, poop, you do it.
Somebody on the text line said, problem with the dad pod is being too tired to do it and not having the time.
The biggest storyline of the dad pod is typically how tired
I was going to
they
say,
are.
I think that would be a great narrative on the podcast of how tired you are.
I feel like for the first 6 months, I was a zombie. Since then, knock on wood, I think we're doing okay. The exhaustion's not really there for me. It's just always going. So there's not a whole lot of time to like
right now. You outnumber
do
the
other
kids.
random stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Ferrario's in a zone defense now.
Yeah.
They outnumber you.
Yeah, they outnumber
That's
us.
their house.
But the good part is the youngest doesn't move yet, so we're still kind of man to man. But in about 6 months, oh yeah.
Somebody said, believe it or not, at 15 months, you can discipline. You can still be in charge if you choose to be. Yeah. That sounds like somebody that doesn't have a 15-month-old to me.
Yeah. Someone said they got a 10-month-old couch and they luckily caught their kid trying to jump off of it. Yeah, they do that too. They think it's a trampoline.
Yeah. My our friend on the street the other day said their kid, he's 3 now. He got on their couch and said, I can fly. Jumped off.
Yeah.
Coming up next, Tom Stillman, Blues chairman. Talk to him next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's a big day here in St. Louis as the St. Louis Blues take the ice at home for the first time for the 2024 regular season. And joining us now to talk about it is Tom Stillman, the chairman of the St. Louis Blues. He joins us via the 101 ESPN hotline. Tom, we appreciate the time as always. How's today treating you ahead of tonight's game?
It's great. It's always an exciting day, the first game of the home season, so excitement is high.
Do you still get the opening day jitters, Tom, of watching this team and hoping to see a winner on opening night home ice?
Yeah, jitters or excitement is just, everything's fresh and new, and there's been obviously a lot of work that's gone into, this year's edition of the St. Louis Blues, and you want to see how it's all going to come together.
Tom, when you look at this year's team, we're only 3 games in. It's obviously an incredibly limited sample size, but already multiple comebacks. They have some young players that have really showed out early on. What is your early impression of this year's squad?
Well, I think I'm kind of in tune with what you're saying. They've shown real character in being able to come back. We weren't doing that at this time last year. So that shows some strength of character and leadership, and we're seeing contributions from young guys, and that's one of our focuses over this year, the next few years, is develop the young players, and also the veterans for the most part have played very well too. So it's been a good start.
Tom, what have these last couple of years been like for you and the ownership group? Because from the moment that you and your group took over, the Blues have been a playoff contending team, and hearing a rebuild or a retool, whatever it might be, isn't probably something that sits well for an ownership group. But watching the Blues navigate through this, what has that been like?
Well, you just kind of, at some point, you realize, where you are, and then you readjust, kind of your goals and the process and what you're trying to do. You don't, you stop. I'm not going to every game thinking, well, we're going to be undefeated this year. You're also really focused on the process of how we're getting better, how we're drafting, how we're developing our players, other methods that we're using in training and all those sorts of things. And, that's interesting as well. Sure, we'd all like to win a cup every year, but the whole process of assessing and then developing and improving the team and a franchise is interesting and exciting as well.
Tom, I think it's really interesting with what you guys have done this past offseason. Given the LTIR space you have available, you're actually technically spending more than what the cap would allow for in the 2024 season. That is not something you see very many NHL teams do while they're going through this retool. For you and the ownership group, what allowed for that and what led to that from your perspective? As an owner, you've got to be the one that green lights the spending for Doug Armstrong. I'm curious what those conversations were like.
Well, I said a couple of times a few months ago that we wouldn't spend to the cap just to be able to say we're going to spend to the cap. But if it makes sense, if it's part of either, making us a better team this year or building our future, then we would. And we feel like the expenditures, the spending we're doing is lines up with that. We took on Broberg and Holloway late in the off season. I guess we could have left that money as it was, but we think they make us better now, and they are, great pieces for our future going forward. So we want to invest in becoming a better and better team and becoming a contender again. And the opportunity was there through the great work of Doug and his team. So we're going to invest.
Doug, I want to go back to what you're talking about with developing the younger players and in the situation that you were just speaking of, spending money to bring in younger players that fit in your core. How difficult is the patient side of this? Because everybody wants results right away. And when you're hoping for 19-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 23-year-olds to develop at the NHL level, that can't be an easy thing to sit through.
Yeah, and I think my friends would say I'm not exactly known for my patience. But again, you have to readjust. You can't hurry it. You know, as Doug would say, you know, organizations cheat players as much as players cheat organizations. We could just put all our young guys on the NHL team right now, for example, but that's not going to be best for their development. It's not going to make them the best players they can be, and it's not going to be the best thing as a result of that for the St. Louis Blues. So you just gotta back off and understand this is part of the process. You don't build a contender overnight, and you keep working at it.
Tom, on the business side of things, and we're talking to Tom Stillman, the chairman of the St. Louis Blues here on BK and Ferrario. Blues opening night tonight at Enterprise Center against the Minnesota Wild. The home opener tonight for the St. Louis Blues. We'll have pregame coverage with Alex beginning at 5:30. On the business side of things, how's the outlook look for you guys this year?
We're in pretty good shape. We are financially stable. I think we've gotten to that position over the last, several years, since 2012. Our ticket sales have been very good, suites, sponsorships, all that sort of thing. The regional sports network issue is a challenge. It's not going to hurt us too much this year. Obviously, it's something we have to be working on going forward. What is going to be the solution going forward? Is Bally's going to be there? But we're in pretty good shape.
That is something that I did want to follow up on with you, Tom. From what you understand and what you can say, at least publicly, how much do you know about the future of what things are going to look like for you on the Bally Sports side of things?
Well, we have assurances that Bally's going to be there for our season, so they will be. Our local partner for broadcasting for 71 games, the ones that are not taken by national, by the national contracts. And so I think we can be reasonably sure that we're going to be televised all year on Bally, although I think it may get a new name soon. And then we go from there. And if, it depends on how they come out of, how they emerge from bankruptcy, what their strength is, and what their plan is in the final analysis when they come out of bankruptcy. We'll see what happens for the future.
Tom, final one from me, and I feel like I've heard from a lot of Blues fans throughout the offseason and now that the season has begun, but what's the pulse of the fan base from your perspective, somebody who is out there a lot with a lot of the fans shaking hands?
I'm not saying that I am getting the most objective, view, because, St. Louis people are nice enough to not come and scream in your face or anything. But, the comments I get is largely, we get it. You guys are doing the right thing. We get it. We're not in the playoffs this year, but you guys you're developing, you're doing the right things. Keep at it. And so it's been largely positive. Again, I'm not saying there are others who maybe feel differently, and they're just nice enough not to come and say anything.
Tom, I apologize. I do want to, while we have the opportunity to talk with you, I do want to go back one more time on the TV side of things. How much conversation, if any, have you guys had with the St. Louis Cardinals, who are at a similar point right now with Bally Sports, although theirs is even more up in the air for the upcoming season? How many conversations do you guys have about what the future could hold here in St. Louis? And is there potential that you guys could do something together on that front?
I don't want to get into specifics.
I think we might be losing Tom Stillman, unfortunately.
Hello?
There we go. We got you back, Tom.
I apologize, Tom. We lost you there at the very beginning of that answer. So I did not hear anything that you just said. I heard you say you can't get into too much of the specifics, but beyond that?
Yeah, beyond that, I will say, yeah, we are having conversations, and we have a good relationship with them, some mutual interest.
I don't think we can. Yeah, we're losing you here.
Yeah, sorry, Tom.
Hey, Tom, we sincerely appreciate the time. We'll have to talk about that another time. Certainly, you guys will have more information on that front as we get further into the season and further along with the bankruptcy plan for Bally Sports as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's got to be an unbelievably busy day. Big day for the St. Louis Blues. Back in action tonight at home for the first time for the 2024 season against the Minnesota Wild. Tom, thanks for the time as always. We wish you all the best. We'll talk with you again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tom.
That's Tom Stillman joining us here on 101 ESPN, Blues chairman of the board. That's a bummer because I really did want to hear his answer on that. It does sound like he can't be too specific. I understand that. Totally get it. I wanted to at least ask the question, give him the opportunity to answer it. It sounds like they've at least had conversations. And beyond that, I don't know because I couldn't really tell.
I mean, he's got great relationships with the Cardinals and the DeWitts, so I would almost guarantee you that they're talking about how to handle something like this moving forward. And, I mean, if you're Tom Stillman also, you're in the loop, but you're also in the dark with it for how everyone is right now. And, of course, you've got guys that are working the business side of this one, relaying information.
I do find it interesting. He said there's a potential to change the name of Bally Sports in the
Wasn't
not too distant
that
future.
discussed as the DraftKings, I thought?
FanDuel was somebody that had previously been tied to it. I was under the impression that didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
So
I haven't seen anything on that.
I don't know.
Time.
There was also the discussion about potentially Amazon coming in and buying out some stuff as well. Again, I don't think that ended up getting very far either. So I don't know exactly what that means or if it means anything. It could just be like they're going to, go to Diamond Sports instead of being Bally Sports. I don't know. I don't know what that means. I zero clue. Found that interesting. Yeah. Alex, what else did you take? Oh, one other thing on the business side of things. I mentioned this previously, but I think we should continue doing so. And this is not me caping for the Blues. You guys know I'll be critical when we need to be critical of them. And I think this is something that fans appreciate every bit as much as what I'm about to say. For them to spend not only up to the cap, but beyond the cap this season, in a year in which they are retooling, I think shows you everything you need to know about what it means for an ownership to truly be committed to winning in the long haul.
Yeah.
This is not something that very many organizations do, especially in this kind of a market in a year where everybody would have totally understood if they had taken a step back. They have the same questions about their TV deal that the Cardinals do. Like their long-term future is very much in question in terms of what that looks like. Now, they don't make the same money on theirs as the Cardinals do. Totally fair. But it's a sizable portion of their revenues. And they're saying, you know what, it's important to us to put the best product on the ice, and we'll figure that out when we get there. So credit to them for going out and doing that. Alex, what else did you take away from that conversation with Blues owner, chairman Tom Stillman?
Tied to what you were speaking of, Tom used the word contenders about 3 or 4 times in this interview that we just did with him, talking about being patient and getting back to contending and making sure that it's there consistently to contend with this roster. And when you've got an ownership group who kind of similar to the Cardinals to where, like, since Tom Stillman has been a part of this team, they missed the playoffs prior to this retool. They missed the playoffs once, and it was by a point. They've always been in the postseason. And it's easy for an ownership group after being consistent on the winning side to sit back and say, you know what? We're going to have to take a step back here financially so that we can put ourselves back in the right position. We had that stretch, and now we got to get back to what's gotten us there. But, man, Tom Stillman, he's gone to the point, and it's not just Tom Stillman. You hear the ownership group. You hear the front office because they're just the voices for an ownership group who are putting the funds out there. They're talking about contending on a consistent basis. And for a guy like Tom Stillman to always have that in the back of your mind, it's a good feeling for a Blues fan to know, like, an ownership group doesn't want to just sit on their hands and wait until things fall in their lap and get a top 5 pick 3 straight years and then start winning. They want to keep spending money if it's the right deal that benefits this Blues team. And, I mean, even before the offer sheets, how many rumors did we hear of the Blues trying to trade for Martin Necas, trying to trade for Cam Fowler? Like, they were always, last year, trying to trade for Travis Sanheim. They were always trying to spend more money to make the team competitive. And it's just a really comforting thing to feel if you're a Blues fan.
Yeah, it shows you they're as invested in the team being good as you are.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think fans want to see. They want to see that from actions, not just words. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed any of our conversation with Tom Stillman, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
We do have some breaking news in the NFL. Another wide receiver has been traded, this one to another contender in the AFC. Who is it? What team's he going to? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you and talking about my friend and insurance agent Tracy Bibb, who is taking care of the Ferrario family with our car and home insurance. Taking care of us, meaning saving us money. She's always, Tracy, that is, looking for competitive rates, making sure that when rates rise elsewhere, she's getting you the most money back to you and your family possible. But it's not just she's finding ways to do that. She's also always available for you. When it comes to customer service, I think it's so important when it comes to your insurance, because bad things happen to your home, to your car. And when that does, you don't want to be left on an 800 number waiting for somebody to call you back so that you can get answers. You want answers right away. And that's what Tracy and her team offer you. They preach all the time. It's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. Plus, Tracy is localized. She cares about her community. It's all the reasons why you need to be working with Tracy Bibb. Give her a call today. Tell her you heard Alex Ferrario talk about it on 101 ESPN, and she'll take you through the whole process. 314-328-4260, 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, we do have some breaking news in the NFL. Another wide receiver has been traded. Another wide receiver has been traded within the AFC, and specifically within the AFC East. That receiver...
Oh, my God, it's DK Metcalf.
...is not DK Metcalf. It is the Buffalo Bills, though, and they are trading for Browns wide receiver Amari Cooper, who has to be thanking his lucky stars that he's getting away from Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Just saying, thank you, God. I'm going to a competent quarterback again. This is going to be great. The full details, Buffalo will get Amari Cooper and a 6th-round pick in next year's draft. Cleveland will get a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft and a 7th-round pick in 2026. So, in other words, it's Amari Cooper for a 3rd-round pick. It's a great deal. It's a great deal for the Bills, man. Totally. They have very little cap space. Amari Cooper, the way his deal was structured, he makes almost nothing in salary. He converted everything into a signing bonus earlier this year. So the Bills are effectively getting Amari Cooper for $1 million the rest of the way. So it changes nothing from them for a cap perspective. As a Chiefs fan, I'm furious about this. He is the exact player that the Chiefs should have been trying like hell to get. And they've got 2 3rd-round picks next year. So I'm really disappointed they weren't in on this. But Amari Cooper's still a really good receiver, man. He's not elite, but he's a really good player. The Bills, earlier today, we talked about where do you rank them in the AFC hierarchy. They are now firmly in that 2nd tier to me.
Yeah.
With Amari Cooper in the mix, he is exactly the kind of receiver that they were missing.
I wonder if the reason we're seeing this is because the Bills realize that the Chiefs might be the other team that's pouncing on this, and they got to get the best receiver available to them now. I mean, this is a great move by Buffalo because not only are you bringing in a top receiver for Josh Allen that now opens up the offense even more. But for the longest time, and we've talked about it, it's felt like the Buffalo Bills have been kind of handcuffed with a guy who has seemingly been somewhat of an issue in the locker room. And I don't think that's the case for a guy like Amari Cooper. Everywhere he's been, whether it's been with the Raiders or the Cowboys, even the early portion of the Browns, they've had success. They've found ways to at least be competitive. And that is a massive win for that Buffalo Bills team. So to me, and then we talked tiers earlier, I still would have Baltimore and Kansas City above them, but a move like this puts Buffalo above the Houston Texans.
Amari Cooper, yards by year in the years that he played a full season. 1,000, 1,100, 1,000, 1,100, 1,100, 900. 1,100, 1,200, and he's at 250 this year because his quarterback can't hit the broadside of a barn. He's only 30 years old. He has been playing in the NFL now for 10 years, and he has every season been a metronome of 1,000 yards. Every single season, he puts up 1,000 yards, regardless of which team he plays for, where he was Oakland, and then Dallas, and then Cleveland. Doesn't matter his quarterback situation. He's just always going out there and giving you 1,000 yards. He's going to do that this year. He's only at 250 right now, so he's way behind the 8 ball. With Josh Allen, he's putting up 1,000 yards this year.
Yeah, and this was the move that puts them back into that top tier for me. I mean, we mentioned it just a couple segments ago. I think the Bills were lacking a weapon. Now you give that to Josh Allen. I don't think this is going to be the situation with Stephon Diggs where it is, hey, I feel like I've got to force feed our number 1 wide receiver. No, he's going to take what is open for him. He's going to make the right play. And now the Bills just elevated themselves in a year in which they were supposed to be kind of taking their medicine on the cap hit. They're also staying competitive. They're kind of retooling on the fly like we're seeing with the St. Louis Blues. They're doing it at the NFL level, and they're now able to add in a piece to help them in the stretch run, which is the perfect fit for the Buffalo Bills. They needed a guy like this to give them a shot to contend with those top teams that we talked about earlier.
I wonder if they resign him, too, because he could be somebody that, 3 years, $60 million, keep him around for a little while.
Make a ton of sense.
It would, if it ends up being a good fit, they have his rights next year.
And
so,
it allows,
or you could just franchise tag him next year.
Yeah, and it allows for some of your younger receivers.
Like $30 million, so maybe they wouldn't
like Keon Coleman.
I forgot how much wide receiver money has exploded, so that actually probably wouldn't make sense too.
And this allows you have like Keon Coleman, for example, your 2nd-round pick from this year. Now he doesn't have to be kind of the guy that is just completely circled on scouting reports. It is
everybody
okay. Kind of grow in yourself.
It's what you did with yourself. It's what you did with Gabe Davis when Stephon Diggs was the number 1 guy. Like Stephon Diggs was the number 1 guy, but Gabe Davis turned himself into a legit number 2.
And Gabe Davis was hey, we're going to target you 4 times a game. They're all going to be 100 yards down the field. If you come down with one of them, cool, you did your job.
Yep.
That's what Keon Coleman probably should be is, hey, you're a deep ball guy. Just run deep 30 times over the course of the game. I'll target you 4 of them, get one defensive pass interference call and catch one of them, and we're good for the day. That's it.
You've built your arsenal up now because now with James Cook, when he comes back healthy, you've got Shakir on top of Coleman and Cooper. You've built up your offense now to be a dangerous weapon.
I wish we had Donnie in here. Donnie's got to be.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
The range of emotions, too, because when Devontae Adams was traded, he probably had to have been pissed off. And then now it's like, oh, yeah, we do the podcast tomorrow. So honestly, it's probably going to be more Bills talk.
I'm surprised we didn't hear his yell of excitement all the way down the hall. I'm shocked.
He keeps it contained.
I will be curious what the next move is because we've seen a decent amount. We're week 6? We're still, I think, 3 weeks away from the NFL's trade deadline. We've seen a good bit of action already compared to what you normally see at this time of the year.
Chiefs got to make the move next. They got to make the move next.
I would think so. I would think if you're the Titans or the Jaguars, you're probably ready to pretty much wave the flag. Maybe the Panthers, depending on what they have to offer. Is your stupid squad ready to?
We're not sellers. What are you talking about? They're going to get back in this thing.
In the crappy NFC West.
Yeah, and I actually don't think they're wrong. They're so beat up right now. And they got Cup coming back.
Over the next 2 weeks, when you go 0-2, can you trade Cooper Kupp?
Don't they play the Raiders this week? What the hell are you talking about? They're going to beat them. They stink.
Not positive you're going to beat the Raiders.
Yeah, they are.
If you
relax over there, Brandon.
So how would you rank these? DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, or Deontay Johnson? Out of those 4, how would you rank them? Not just from the KC perspective, but you're a contender that needs a wide receiver.
Deontay Johnson would probably be number 1. Who were the rest of them?
DeAndre
Hopkins, Kirk.
Williams, and Kirk.
I would go Kirk 2.
Williams 3.
Hopkins 3, Williams 4. That would probably be my list. However, teams will have to take into account the money side of things, and that changes things a lot. Deontay Johnson would definitely still be number 1,
Kirk
but after
would probably
that,
be the bottom.
Yeah, Kirk's money is just it depends on what the teams are willing to eat. You know, we've seen this in the past where teams will take on more money if you give up more to get them. The problem is is Christian Kirk really a guy that you're going to give up a ton to be able to have another team eat money? I don't know.
I like this tweet I just saw. Amari Cooper, better player point of view. Amari Cooper from Deshaun Watson to Josh Allen. Devontae Adams from Aiden O'Connell / Gardner Minshew to Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, clearly Amari Cooper.
Yeah,
it's not even close.
Devontae Adams is getting a 6-year older Aaron Rodgers
100%.
And less dangerous.
Somebody said, BK, is Christian Kirk the best option left for Casey? In my opinion, I think he makes the most sense for them. I think what they'll probably do, though, they'll probably do what they always do, which is go out and get a lesser option. They'll get Mike Williams. They'll trade for Mike Williams, or they'll trade for Darius Slayton.
They'll get Adam Thielen from the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. They'll get a guy that you look at, you're like, okay, I see how that would make sense. And then he'll catch 300 yards the rest of the year, have a huge play in the postseason, they'll win the Super Bowl because that's what they do. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends at Victory Men's Health. They've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and if you want to check them out today, you can do so at victorymenshealth.com. Whether you have some weight loss goals that you've been trying to meet on your own, you just haven't been able to do so, they can help you out with that over at Victory Men's Health. The first thing you do whenever you go in for one of your appointments, they put you on the scale, and it's going to check out exactly where your body weight is. So it'll check out what your body fat is by the different areas in your body. What is your lean muscle mass? What's your bone? They're going to check all of that out for you the moment that you walk through the door, and that's just the beginning of your appointment. Once you go in there, you'll be able to talk to one of their certified physicians about exactly what it is that you're there to unlock your inner champion for. For me, it was finding out where my micronutrient levels were. They were able to do that for me with a lab draw kit. They got me my results back, found out, okay, my testosterone levels are in the normal range. I am severely low on a few of my vitamin deficiencies. They helped me out with that. They can do the same for you, whether it's low testosterone, weight loss, erectile dysfunction issues. Victory Men's Health is the place to go to unlock your inner champion today at victorymenshealth.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center Update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action today as they've got their home opener against the Minnesota Wild. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Garber for puck drop at 6:30. Big trades out of the NFL today as Devontae Adams was traded from the Las Vegas Raiders to the New York Jets, and just broke about 30 minutes ago. The Buffalo Bills are acquiring Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns. The Sports Center Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Ooh, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, let's start out with this. Bet It or Forget It. Both Broberg and Holloway, the two new additions, will record at least 1 point tonight.
Oh, bet it. I love this play. First goal scorer in this one, Dylan Holloway. Book it.
What are the odds? You got the odds on that?
No, I don't have the odds on it. I'm just telling you.
They're
book
great,
it.
I bet.
Okay.
Right now. I guarantee you they're probably like plus 2,000.
Of Illinois.
Bet it.
Plus 2,000 feels a little aggressive.
I don't know, man. I had a first goal scorer in the first game was supposed to be Pavel Buchnevich, and it was plus 1,800. It wasn't Pavel Buchnevich.
He was that high.
Yeah, it wasn't Pavel Buchnevich. Well, it's the first goal scorer, so it's like the guy that scores the first goal of the game. Those are typically a little bit higher odds.
It's not like you picked a fourth liner.
Man, I'm telling you, man.
Why not? You know what? I'll be optimistic today. Dude, it's a beautiful day on a Tuesday. I'll bet it. These guys get a point tonight.
Probert just like flings it at the net and hopes something happens, and I love that style of hockey.
Yeah, it's a welcomed addition given what the Blues have been in that regard in recent seasons. I'll go ahead and bet it as well. Why not? Let's go ahead and see the new guys getting on the board. Alex, what do you got for us today?
Guys, bet it or forget it. The Buffalo Bills finish better this season than Baltimore.
Like record-wise? Mm-hmm. Let me check their respective schedules.
That wasn't a part of the deal.
Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, you said, is the other team?
Yes, sir.
Ravens, upcoming schedule, Tampa, Cleveland, Denver, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Chargers, the Eagles, Giants, Pittsburgh, Houston, Cleveland. Okay,
Baltimore.
Working with a little something there. Now, here's the Bills.
Oh, okay, here we go. This is when it gets good.
Tennessee, Seattle, Miami, Indy. Well, that's 4 wins. KC, San Francisco, Detroit, the Rams,
lost.
The Pats, the Jets, the Pats.
The Bills, just look this up to shorten the long reading. The Buffalo Bills have the second easiest schedule remaining in the NFL.
Who has the easiest?
Miami.
Not Baltimore.
I was wondering if he was doing that thing there where he was like, I'm not going to tell you who the actual... give me the Ravens.
You're a hater. You're a Josh Allen hater.
But I'll go the Ravens. They already have the tiebreaker too, so I'll go the Ravens.
I'll probably go Ravens as well. I think they're just a better football team than Buffalo is, even though I think Buffalo definitely closed the gap today, so I'll say forget it.
I'm going to say bet it. I think Buffalo is the second best team in the AFC by season's end. By the way, Dylan Holloway plus 2,500 if he scores the first goal tonight.
Oh. So
bet it. And then Venmo me a little bit of that cash when you win.
Broberg plus 8,000.
Now that one is just wild.
Yeah, don't take that one.
Put $100 on that one because if it hits, ladies and gentlemen,
please don't
do it. Then Venmo me when you get it.
Bet it or forget it. Masyn Winn will lead the Cardinals in WAR again next season.
Bet it.
I thought you were going to say home runs.
I thought about saying 25 home runs, but I didn't want to hear him again.
How about that?
Yeah, I would bet that too. Defensive purposes are going to put him above that no matter what. Now, I will be curious what his defense looks like if you don't have Goldschmidt at first base. Not saying that Goldie was the only one that saved him, but
I will say it.
I mean, Goldie is above the rest at first base. So if you're playing there with Wilson Contreras, Burleson, Jordan Walker, whomever you go with, it's going to be different than Goldschmidt.
Yeah, I think he's going to be amazing next year.
We know, buddy. We know.
I will bet it. Just because, thinking of what their roster could look like, there's not a lot of guys that could finish with a higher WAR. Like Helsley was even significantly behind him, and he had a great year. He's not going to be here next year probably. Gray, if he's not here, it's hard to see him beating him. I think like the only guy. It would
have to be a position player.
It would have to be probably like
Contreras.
Walker.
Or Contreras if he's here.
If he's here. But like the only guys like I'm locking in is like I know they're going to be here. Like I think the only guy that could do it is Walker.
I think Newt I know this sounds crazy. Like if Newt has a really, really good year, he has the defensive value, the base running,
like
the
he doesn't
hitting.
play for just a month.
That's the problem. Is I cannot possibly expect him to do so. So yeah, I would go Masyn Winn. All right, let's get to this from the text line. Guys from the 636, better to forget it. All 4 NFC North teams will make the postseason. Talked about a little bit about this yesterday. I would forget it, but I can't tell you which one's going to miss. I would say right now the Bears. Yeah. But I think all 4 of them are really good teams.
I think Minnesota and Detroit are locks, and it's going to come down to that last one, which I would give Green Bay the upper hand. So, yeah, forget it.
Yeah, forget it as well. I think the Bears will still miss the playoffs.
From the 314, better to forget it, the Bills will actually get to the Super Bowl this year.
Forget it.
Well, forget it, because the Chiefs always cheat in the game, and they're not going to get past the referees.
Yeah, truth. Forget it.
I'm going to forget it as well. I don't know that they have...
I don't know if they get past whoever it is they meet in the... What would that be? Conference semis.
Yeah, the divisional round.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember the name.
I worry a little bit about their defense when the stakes get the highest. I think their defense is well coached. I'm not sure it's overly talented. They made a few big plays yesterday. They've got a linebacker that's excellent. They've got a couple of corners that are really good. But other than that, I think there's some holes in what they have defensively. Better to forget it. Ryan Helsley will be traded this offseason, and we will be underwhelmed by the return.
Bet it. Because it's not going to be a name that anybody knows. And you're going to be like, you just gave up a guy who has single-season franchise leader with saves, and you just gave him up for nobody? Bet it.
I'm going to forget it. I think we can convince ourselves on who they bring in. I think next year, 2 years down the road, is when you look back on it and go, well, wait a minute. Why did we trade him for a guy that flamed out in our system? I think more of...
No faith.
I think you're going to see it more in a couple of years than it is just immediately. Like, we liked all the returns they got at the previous deadline for their rentals, so I'll forget it.
I'm going to bet this. We were talking about this a little bit before the show today. I would be curious if our text line can think of any. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Who are the all-star caliber closers that have been traded in recent years in the offseason? Not at the deadline, in the offseason that you can recall, with 1 year remaining on their deal. So essentially, the comparison point for Ryan Helsley. I'm sure there are some. I can't immediately think of them. And I've tried to do a little bit of digging into this. It's just, it's very rare to see a player like this dealt at all. And I think part of that is because the return is not as significant as what you would anticipate. Typically, teams want this when they are truly craving it, which is during the regular season at the deadline. And so my fear is that the Cardinals will get less than what they're looking for this offseason. And there will be 2 responses to that. Either one, you just keep him and you decide to take him into the regular season. And now you're playing the roulette game of, is he going to be healthy and pitching well once you get to the deadline to get the most return possible? Or 2, they accept less and decide to move him in the offseason for less than what we're otherwise expecting.
It's tough because every time we've heard a name over the last few seasons that could be traded, Pittsburgh with Bednar and Class A with the Guardians this past year, they've always been pulled off the table because the offers don't match the...
Exactly. But those guys all had multiple years of control. That's what's also different about this is it's 1 year remaining of Ryan Helsley at a totally reasonable like $7 to $10 million. It's really hard to find the comparison point for it, and so I'll be interested to see what they ultimately get for Ryan Helsley if they decide to go that route. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, we'll put a bow on this thing in the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN. Hey, you can catch Anthony Stalter and Rafe from The Riz Show on Thursday night at Hot Shots in Fenton from 6:30 to 8:30. Come on, hang out with the guys. Watch Thursday Night Football. You're there for the company, not for the game. Broncos versus the Saints. While you're there, get signed up for some Point 101 ESPN giveaways. Enjoy Cold Bud Light Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30. Hanging out with Rafe and Stalter at Hot Shots in Fenton. It's all refreshed by Bud Light. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Put a bow on this thing today as the Blues are back in action this evening. It's their first home game of the 2024 regular season. Pre-game with Alex beginning at 5:30. Puck drop for this one today on your home of the Blues 101 ESPN at 6:30. Alex, are going up against the Minnesota Wild. I'm imagining, because I know how prepared you are, you have done a lot of your prep work already for your pre-game show. What is the thing that you're most interested in finding out about this team today as they take the ice against Minnesota?
It's going to be the 5-on-5 offense once again. I mean, Minnesota is your first look at a Central Division team, and these are always competitive. I believe 3 of the 4 games were 1-goal games against Minnesota last season. But it's going to be your 5-on-5 offense. Now with Saad back, you're going up against a team that's better defensively than what you saw in those 3 games with the exception of Vegas. How do you look? Are you able to generate more offense with this one? And a team that was 10 games above 500 last year, 24-14-2 on home ice. Can you keep building off of that? Because that's what kept you close to a playoff spot last year. You were really good on home ice.
Yeah, I agree on keeping an eye on the 5-on-5 offense because, I can listen to the, I don't know if you want to call it an excuse or the reasoning behind it of why did it struggle in the 3 games on the road trip? Well, they didn't have Brandon Saad. They're missing a pretty big piece to their top 6, and he's going to be playing on, I think, the top line what the lines were yesterday and today at practice were. So it's the 5-on-5 offense. How does that look like? Does Brandon Saad kind of get that top line going a little bit? And also, how does Buchnevich now look when you're going up against, again, at least a team that's close to you where you're at and that second line center spot?
I just want to see how your young talent looks compared to a team that has a lot of young talent on their own right. Like, they've got Faber, they've got Boldy, they've got Kaprizov, they've got a lot of young players that have come in, and we know they're good players already based upon what they've already produced at the NHL level. What do your guys look like when going head-to-head against that group of young players on the other side?
Those are good people. Those are good positions to build around, too, if you're Minnesota, because you've
100%.
got stars in 2 of the 3 with Boldy's going to get to that point, but you've got your centerman, you've got your winger, and you've got your defenseman.
Hey, sounds like the Blues, where they've got their centerman in Robert Thomas. I think they've got 2 wingers that are at a minimum top 6 caliber, and Jordan Kyrou and Pavel Buchnevich, just a matter of where.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you've got potentially a defenseman right now with Broberg that you could build around long term. So Blues are in a really interesting spot. If you guys missed anything from today's show, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
Had a great talk with Jeremy Rutherford. He talked to an NHL scout, talked about the upside that exists with Dylan Holloway. We also talked to Minnesota Wild general manager Bill Guerin ahead of tonight's matchup against the Wild here in St. Louis. He told some good stories, talked about his time here in St. Louis, also talked about the difficulties and why they decided to go through a retool in Minnesota similar to what the Blues are trying to accomplish. And, of course, Tom Stillman, Blues chairman, joined us earlier today as well, discussed why they decided to spend up to the cap this year and what their TV future holds on Bally Sports. So check that all out on the podcast page. For Alex, who you'll hear coming up at 5:30 today for the pregame show, and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fast Lane's coming up next.